Good afternoon, everyone. So, this is my last class for you and for you for this year, for previous MA. Coming to this last class, I hope most of you have logged in to this online content as the last class of mine. I can see only one comment, that is Zenuka Alibari. Good afternoon, sir. You can see most of them still in line. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope I can start the class. Uh, they're still coming. Yes. Uh, I need your comment. I know. I want to know whether you are in class or not. Whether if they join late to the class, I can't help them. I can't go back to the text once again. So there are only four comments I can see. There are a few more students joining later, and it's okay. It doesn't mind. Again, it doesn't make any difference for me. Let me start the class. It's already 2 p.m. So, coming to today's class, the last session of mine, like for you, the last class, and welcome. So, I wish you all the best for your exams and all. And I hope given justice to all the texts that are allotted to me. Uh, Coming to today's class, I got one more text to deal with, and I still feel that the time is not enough for me to means to teach you people. Like I need at least more than 20 to 30 hours to cover all the syllabus that has been allotted to me. So, so I told you, like I'll be dealing with one more text from the paper Shakespeare, course 2, Shakespeare, last but not the least, the greatest tragedy of William Shakespeare. William Shakespeare, which is called as Macbeth. Macbeth is considered, so as a reader, as a student of literature, I consider this particular work as the masterpiece, as the greatest tragedy of all the tragedies of Shakespeare. So he has written so many tragedies, but Macbeth stands as the number one tragedy, as the number one tragedy. Uh, that's my personal opinion. So you might consider another play as your favorite tragedy, but for me, Macbeth stands as the topmost tragedy of William Shakespeare. Though it was written and published in the year 1606, it was published in the year 1606, but this play was enacted. This play was first enacted in 1603. In 1603, before the royal court of King James I. King James I, again, he becomes the successor of Elizabeth I. He comes to power, James I. He starts to rule England, and in order to in order to please his bread giver, or whatever you say, his boss, that is King James I. Again, Shakespeare writes a play called Macbeth. So you see, the play Macbeth has got something to do with King James I. King James I, which I'll tell it later. So King James I has succeeded Elizabeth I. He comes to power in 1603. William Shakespeare. So who is this asking questions directly? Our questions rises on this topic. See, you can ask questions later on. First, listen to the lecture. Okay. Our questions risen on this topic. What is this? Don't straight away ask questions. Okay. Give me some time to breathe. Let me deal with the text first of all. So don't be so don't be in such a hurry. Don't be in such a hurry. Don't be in such a hurry, because again I want you to understand the text. First, understand the text. Don't straight away don't ask me for important questions on this text. So coming to this particular play, as I told you, it was it was enacted on again in front of King James I. King James I in 1603. In 1603, so King James I has something to do. He has got some connection with the play because he has his roots with someone in this play, with someone in this play. So that is the reason why at the same time, as I told you, the material for this plot, or the material or the plot for this particular text, for this particular play, he has derived it. He has borrowed it from Raphael Olinscher's The Chronicles of the Kings from England, Scotland, and Denmark. Isn't it? I had told it. I had told you. Sorry, I had told you in the last class itself that he borrows materials, much of the materials from the Scandinavian for the kings, for materials related to the kings of Scandinavian countries like Denmark, Scotland, and even for the kings of Norway, Denmark. So he borrows materials for on such kings from Raphael Olinscher's Chronicles of and the Chronicles of Scotland, kings of Scotland, Denmark, okay, and England. So as I told you, this was first performed on stage on 20th on before 1603, sorry, on 1603 in front of King James, but it was first enacted on stage before public in 1610. In 1610, on 20th April 1610, and as I told you, this play is a tragedy, and again, why do you call what is a tragedy according to you? A tragedy. Why it is a tragedy? Because here the hero falls again. It's the fall of a great man. It's the fall of a great man. Uh, uh, was again the fall of a great man brought by the fatal flaw in his character. So that is what again Aristotle believes in. He believes in amartia, the the mistake committed by the heroes. So it's a fall of a great man. The tragedy means a fall of a great man, brought by the fatal flaw in his or her own in his or her character. Again, Macbeth is also considered as tragedy of destiny, tragedy of destiny. There are four important plays which can be categorized into tragedies of destiny. Tragedies of destiny. One is King Lear, the second play is Macbeth, and the third play is Hamlet, and the fourth play is Othello. Here in Tragedies of Destiny, we have a hero. We have a hero who gives the name to the play. So all these tragedies of destinies, in all these tragedies of destinies, so those plays are named after the heroes, who comes to utter ruin or disaster because of the defect in their character, who comes to utter ruin or disaster because of what? Because of the defect in their character. Because of the defect in their character. So every hero finds himself in circumstances which require the very quality in which he is lacking. So every hero is tested. Every hero is tested. Time tests every hero. So every hero, including you and me, we can consider ourselves as heroes in our life. So we also encounter or face certain circumstances, certain situations where we have to prove our mettle, where we have to prove our strength, where we have to prove our mental strength in making proper decisions. So there, in this particular case, Macbeth is again it's a play of tragedy, it's a play or a tragedy of destiny. It's a tragedy of destiny where the true test of Macbeth's character is visible, and Macbeth makes fatal mistakes, fatal flaws which which changes the fortunes, which changes the fortunes of his life, which changes the fortunes of his life. So he commits certain mistakes which changes the fortunes of his life. So every hero is strong enough, strong personality. Every hero is a strong personality, and certainly again imbibes noble qualities, but has one weakness. But has one weakness. So every hero, including me and yourself, we, as I told you, we ourselves can call ourselves. We can call ourselves as heroes in our own life, in our own personal life. But still, though we have got so many strengths and so many again strong personalities, strong characteristics, still we still have got some weaknesses, right? We still have got some weaknesses. So King Lear in the play King Lear had the weakness. That is the weakness with King Lear. The case with King Lear in the play King Lear is again he was very passionate. He was very passionate in his love towards the other two daughters, isn't it? His love towards the other two daughters, passionate. Whereas Hamlet, what is the weakness that you see in Hamlet? Hamlet is incapable of taking any actions, taking any action. So what about Macbeth? Macbeth is over ambitious. That is the weakness. That is the weakness that you see in Macbeth. Macbeth is over ambitious. Hamlet is incapable of taking actions, any proper action. At the same time, King Lear is known for what? Known for passionate feelings, isn't it? At the same time, Othello is known for jealous. The weakness that you see in the character called Othello is jealous. These are all great men, great human beings. They were princes, they were kings, but still they had their own weaknesses. Weaknesses. So in that way, there is a fatal flaw in the character. That is the reason why they fall from such a greater height. So they are in the initial stage of every play of all these four plays. In the initial stage, these heroes appear like heroes, but as the play continues, as the play progresses, you can see that these heroes are becoming what? Anti-heroes. Anti-heroes. Macbeth is an anti-hero, but still he gains the public sympathy or the reader's sympathy. You know, Shakespeare has created a character through Macbeth who seems a villain rather than a hero, who seems a villain rather than a hero, and yet he is the main character who holds the sympathy, and interest of the audience. He holds the sympathy and interest of the audience. Though he has been created as an anti-hero, he holds the sympathy and interest of the audience. Audience do feel pity for the way he dies, for the death, for the kind of death he meets with. Right? So Macbeth fails because he is a great unscrupulous. He has great unscrupulous ambition. He fails because of his over ambition, unscrupulous ambition. And this particular play is designed to show that there is great temptation for a man who is ambitious. There is a difference, slight difference between greed and ambition. Ambition is something which you want to attain, a kind of success which you want to attain through proper hard work, through proper channel. It means a test of success which you want to attain through proper hard work or through proper channel. But here again, as I told you, he was over ambitious. So he immediately wants to become something. For that, he commits an error, a mistake. Okay. So the play is the only study of pure wickedness. The play is the only study of pure wickedness. Pure wickedness. Shakespeare made Macbeth commit serious crimes and had retained for him the interest and sympathy of the audience. So Shakespeare makes his hero commit some serious crimes, yet his hero is able to what sustain the sympathy and interest of the audience. Do you attribute Macbeth's downfall to his fate or to weakness in himself? We'll see that later. So Aristotle pronounces to overthrow of a bad man to be no tragedy at all. So according to Aristotle, an overthrow of a bad man cannot be considered as a tragedy. An overthrow of a bad man cannot be considered as a tragedy because. But the fact is, Macbeth is initially is not a bad man. Initially, is not a bad man. It is the destiny, it is the fate which plays a vital role in his life, and that makes him gets tempted and to take a bad decision in his life. The original Macbeth believed to be a monarch. The original again Macbeth. There was a man called Macbeth who lived. He was a monarch who reigned Scotland, who ruled Scotland for almost 17 years. He comes to power in the year 1040. He comes to power in the year 1040, and he was killed in the battle in the fight with in that fight with Macduff in the year 1057. That means he rules Scotland for almost 17 years. Scotland is located to the northern part of England. Okay, Scotland, England, and you have Wales. You have Wales. To the left, you can see Ireland. Ireland is the other neighboring country to England. So Scotland is located to the northern part of England. So he ruled Scotland for 17 years from 1040 to 1057. 1057. There lived a man There was a power cut. Due to that, I lost the contact. Sorry. So that's okay. I can I hope you can hear me and I'm visible to you. Video got paused. Yes. Sorry for that. And so as I was telling you, uh, Macbeth ruled for almost 17 years. There was a king called Macbeth who ruled Scotland for 17 years, and he was actually killed by Macduff. Now Macduff and uh, again he was the 11th. He was there in 11th century. He belongs to 11th century. Took the throne in second throne in 1040, as I told you, and the action of the play takes place in the northern part of Scotland. This particular castle, the castle of again where Macbeth lived and fought the war, is still very much standing as offshore Atlantic Ocean, and and it is still there. The castle in which Macbeth ruled, lived, is very much there even now today in Scotland. That's for your information. So, play opens with the Scottish army. That I'll come to that. That means I'll discuss that later. So, this play is considered as the shortest tragedy of Shakespeare. This play is considered as the shortest tragedy. It's a short play, but it has got 5 acts, but a short play. At the same time, entire play is filled with violence. Entire play is filled with violence. Violence is another important theme because the play starts with war and the play ends with the theme of war, like with an issue of war, with aspect of war. So you can see that war means war has something to do with violence. Violence and war, they are interrelated. The play starts with the war and ends with the war. So at the same time, you can see at least 40 times Shakespeare uses the word blood, bloody, and also the word night, which is symbolic of darkness. So symbolizes darkness. So night, blood, bloody. So such words are often repeated in the entire. These words are often repeated in the entire play. At least 40 times uses those words. So blood, bloody, night. So blood, bloody. Again, those words signifies what? Signifies violence. Those words signify violence. The words blood and night or forms of forms of the theme with like bloody occur more than 40 times. More than 40 times each in Macbeth. Other commonly occurring words that help maintain the mood or the tempo of the play are terrible, horrible, black, devil, and evil. So, in order to sustain the tempo or the mood of the play, he uses the words like blood, night, and horrible, black, devil, and evil. These are the words which are often repeated, often used in the play Macbeth. So, some of the interesting questions that might be asked you to as a reader. There are some important questions which I'll pose to you at the end of the play. So coming to this particular text, as I told you, the play begins with the war. So this man Macbeth is a general of the Scottish army general. He is working for a king called Duncan. Duncan is ruling Scotland. He is the king of Scotland. Duncan, you have Malcolm, Malcolm. Malcolm, his elderly son. So you have a king called Duncan ruling Scotland. Duncan, Duncan, Duncan ruling Scotland. He has 2 sons. One is Malcolm, 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 his elder son. He has got another son called Donalbain. So Donalbain. He is the younger son of Duncan. You have 2 army generals. In this play. One is Macbeth, army general Macbeth. The other army general is Banquo. So Banco is the other army general who is a good and loyal friend of Macbeth. Good and loyal friend of Macbeth. So both of them have gone for a battle to defeat one of the Norwegian invader. Norwegian invader. His name is MacDonald, something like MacDonald. So he has invaded Scotland. He has invaded Scotland. So at the same time, the Thane of Cawdor, a province in Scotland, that particular Thane means a man of a particular rank. A particular rank. Thane means a man of a particular rank, like Duke you have Duke. In the same way, you have Thane in Scotland. A Thane of Cawdor is also even he has also joined hands with the Norwegian invading king, and both these army generals of Duncan's kingdom, they defeat the Norwegian invader. They have defeated the Norwegian invader, and both Banquo and again Macbeth, they are returning to Scotland with the success after winning the battle with the Norwegian invader. So what happens in the story? The play opens with the scene of a desert, like it's a plain region. It's almost like a desert. It's a deserted part. There you can see on the eve of that plain region, three witches are waiting for the arrival of Macbeth. They are waiting for Macbeth, so they want to disclose something. They have got a prophecy, or they want to predict something to Macbeth. So here, the role of witches is very important. Witches, they are the diabolical powers. The witches are the diabolical powers, and they are the catalyst for all the events. So witches can be considered as the catalyst for all the events in the play. They are the catalyst for all the events. They are the ones who plant. The three witches are the chief culprits. They are the ones who plant the what? Plant the seed of ambition. Seed of ambition in Macbeth's obsessive mind. In Macbeth's obsessive mind. So they are diabolical in power. So what are the means how powerful they are? Witches can predict the future. They can predict the future. Witches means in Kannada you call them as Matagathir. Matagathir, right? Witches can predict the future. They can bring on night. They can bring on the night in daytime. At the same time, they can cause fogs and tempests. They can cause fogs, FOGS, fogs and tempests. They can kill animals. They can curse enemies with the fatal diseases, and cause nightmare and sterility. They can rise evil spirits by concocting a brew. They can rise evil spirits by concocting a brew. So Shakespeare uses the witches to give an hairy atmosphere, hairy atmosphere, and also to give an haunting effect. Witches for Macbeth, witches are like instruments of darkness. Even Macbeth, though he was a brave soldier, brave army general, even Macbeth is scared of witches. He calls them as instruments of darkness. Instruments of darkness. So the reason behind having such supernatural elements in the play Macbeth is very simple, because King James I believed in such superstitious ideas, superstitious thoughts. He had a belief in such superstitious thoughts. So in order to entertain him, in order to make him, in order to appease his master, Shakespeare includes witches and also ghosts of Banquo. So witches, ghosts, okay, they're all the supernatural elements that you see in the play. They are the supernatural elements you can see in the play. So it is the very again, intention means Shakespeare intentionally includes the witches in his play in order to give an extra effect, in order to keep that memento or the tempo of curiosity in the minds of audience. At the same time, in order to appease or satisfy King James I, who believed in superstitious uh, thoughts, who had a belief in superstitious thoughts. For that reason, he uses witches who Shakespeare. So you can see those three witches are already there, waiting on the heat of the desert. So for Macbeth, so Macbeth is coming there along with Banquo, and once they see Macbeth, these are the three predictions. These are the three prophecies they utter. They utter before Macbeth. The first prophecy is again the first meeting of witches. In the very first meeting, you can see. So he is returning from war. Macbeth is coming back from war. In the very first instant, like after coming from war, he is meeting whom? The three witches. While returning from war, he is meeting three witches. The first witch says that Macbeth, the where three sisters make the predictions, the word three witches, where three witches makes the predictions. Three predictions. What are those three predictions? The first prediction is Macbeth will earn a noble title, a noble title. So before Macbeth reaches Duncan's palace, reaches his kingdom. So he was told that he has been appointed as the Thane of Cawdor. Thane of Cawdor means it's a province in Scotland. He has been replaced by the Thane who has joined hands with the Norwegian king. So in order to award him, in order to what? It's a reward. It's a reward given by Duncan for what? For his what brave act of winning the war. It's a, like for winning the war, he has already won the war, and the result of that winning the war is he has got a reward. He has got a reward. What is that reward? He's been appointed as the Thane of Cawdor. So the second prediction is Macbeth will be the king of Scotland. So Macbeth will be the king of Scotland. It's nothing but, so king means, kingship means power, which is a driving force behind his actions, which becomes a driving force for Macbeth. Kingship means power. So at the same time, power means what? Power means something that drives you, and that power is a driving force for Macbeth for all his actions. He becomes ambitious. He wants to achieve that kingship. He wants to reach. He wants to become the king of Scotland. So for king of Scotland, but the fact is there is a king who is still alive called Duncan. And whatever the third prediction says, Banquo will produce a line of kings. Banquo will produce a line of kings. That is why I told you, King James I, who succeeds Elizabeth I in 1603, is the one who shares the blood of Banquo. So he is the one. First, King James IV. Again, King James I is also called as King James IV in Scotland. The same King James IV becomes King James I in England. So he shares the blood of Banquo. He is from Banquo's family. So he is the progeny of Banquo. That is the reason why Shakespeare has included this particular third prediction in this play. Of Macbeth, in this play called Macbeth. The third prediction says Banquo will produce a line of kings. That means the future generation, the future children of Macbeth would not be. They don't have any right. They may not become the future kings of Scotland. So it is very, very certain that Macbeth is going to become the king, but at the same time, there is a question mark for his future generation, that they don't have any fortune or luck to become the kings of Scotland. It is the Banquo's line of means Banquo's family members or the progeny who has got that luck or fortune to be the future would-be kings of Scotland. So that is the third prediction. So witches vanish. Then comes what? The messenger to tell Macbeth that he has been appointed as the Thane of Codar from Duncan. He has given him a noble title that he has become what? A Thane of Codar. So all Macbeth can think about is his sister's final prophecy. What is that final prophecy? And the thought he might become a king, but the final prophecy is that Banquo's future progeny will produce, or future progeny will stand in the light, will become the future would be kings of Scotland. So that is what the final prediction is. He is worried about that. Who? Macbeth is worried about that. So as soon as he returns to the palace, he narrates the same. He narrates all those three predictions to his wife, Lady Macbeth. Lady Macbeth. So Lady Macbeth, in the initial stage, tempts Macbeth. In fact, Lady Macbeth is also considered as the fourth witch by the critics. Critics call Lady Macbeth as the fourth witch because in the initial stage, Macbeth was not intended to kill Duncan to be the king of Scotland. He was not so intended. He was not ready mentally to kill Duncan. It is with the temptation. It is with the temptation. It is that Lady Macbeth who boosts, who boosts, not only boosts Macbeth, she also chides him. Criticizes him, makes fun of him. So she believes that she also says that he's a coward. He's a coward, and also she also says that he is not fit to be means he lacks the courage or valor to kill someone. So these tempting words, in fact, makes Macbeth more furious, and he, in fact, fits in a kind of energy in Macbeth's mind to kill Duncan. He decides to kill Duncan. On the same occasion, Duncan, who also falls victim to Macbeth's plan. Duncan, in fact, asks Macbeth as soon as he returns from the battle. Once he rewards him with that thainship, that position called Thane, because he has appointed him as the Thane of Coward. So what happens here in the play? He also announces that he has been appointed as the Thane of Coward. At the same time, Codar. But at the same time, he also says that he wants to come for the dinner. He wants to come and join the Macbeth's family, means husband and wife, that particular day for dinner. And again, Macbeth returns to his palace, which is called as Inverness, the palace of Inverness. He returns to his castle called Inverness. There he narrates everything to Lady Macbeth. Lady Macbeth again thinks that this is the right opportunity. They have got the right opportunity to kill Duncan. So in fact, Duncan is killed on the same night, soon after the dinner. When Duncan goes to sleep, when he is fallen asleep, he has been killed, and at the same time they use the same dagger which is filled with the blood stain of Duncan. They use the same dagger to what? To blame the two soldiers guarding Duncan. They put the same daggers next to the soldiers who are fainted, who are guarding Duncan. They have been given some wine. They have again in the intoxication, in that again a kind of mindset or so mood. They have fallen asleep, and these soldiers are blamed for killing Duncan. Though they didn't have any hand in the killing of Duncan, they have been blamed, and for that, at the same time, all the family, all the royal courtiers, or the people in the royal court of Scotland, feel that Macbeth is at the same time Duncan's children, that is Malcolm and Donalbain. They flee to England and Ireland. So Donalbain lives for England, whereas Malcolm, the elder son of Duncan, lives for Ireland. They are scared about the safety of their life So in order to, because their father has been, their own father again is killed, is now killed, and they fear about the safety of their life. In order to escape from the clutches of death, one brother, that is Malcolm, flees to Ireland, whereas his younger brother Donald Bill flees to England. So they take the political asylum. They take the political asylum in the neighboring countries of Scotland. And what happens after that? Even Macduff also joins hands with Malcolm, who has fled to Ireland. So he wants to take revenge. At the same time, what happens in the story is, again, Macbeth is also fully aware that the future generation of Banquo will be the future kings of Scotland. For that purpose, he decides to kill Banquo and his family members. He kills Banquo with the appointed killers, murderers, and what happens later on? His son Fleance, Banquo's son Fleance, escapes. He also escapes from Scotland. He moves towards England, and he also seeks political asylum in England. In England, and you can see again Macbeth becoming a killing machine. He kills again people one after the other. So he becomes a merciless. He turns into a merciless tyrant, a killer. Okay, a cold-blooded murderer. A cold-blooded murderer. He becomes a cold-blooded murderer. At the same time, he is restless because he is very much sure that Banquo's son Fleance has escaped from Scotland. That means there is a threat to his safety. There is a threat to his kingship. So for that reason, what he does, he also plans to kill again Fleance, but he has escaped. At the same time, he again disturbed with this disturbed mindset. He goes to that keep that he had where he had met the three witches. Once again, he goes there to meet those three witches, and once again he wants to know what will be his future. He wants to know what exactly is going to happen in his life, what is going to happen to his life in future. So what happens there? The three witches have got again three more predictions. According to those three more predictions, again you can see the three predictions according to the witches. No one born of a woman could kill him. No one born with a natural birth, can kill Macbeth. No man, no individual or human being born with the natural born in the again with the natural process of birth or born with the natural process again can kill Macbeth. In the second, what is the second prediction? There is nothing to worry because until the woods of Burnham, the forest called Burnham, BIRNAM, the forest called Burnham moves itself towards the castle of Inverness. So nobody can again touch you, nobody can kill you. So the first prediction is no human being or no man born out of his mother's womb with a natural birth can kill you. And the second prediction is until and unless the forest of Burnham moves itself towards the castle of Inverness, there is no threat to your life. And what about the third prediction? The third prediction is again, as I told you, those are the two predictions. Sorry, there is no third prediction here. So again, satisfied. Again, Macbeth is satisfied now with these two predictions. He returns to his palace and he feels satisfied. At the same time, on the other side, you can see Lady Macbeth is mentally sick. She is disturbed. She is suffering from somnambulism, or what do you call it? Insomnia or somnambulism. She is suffering from that, and you can see that famous sleepwalking scene. It is the first and the famous first and the last famous sleepwalking scene used by any librarian in any piece of work, in any again, part of the world in any form of literature in the world. Nobody, no other literarian across the world has used this particular scene to such an effect, and it is the first and the last sleepwalking scene that you see in the world literature. Sleepwalking scene where Lady Macbeth walks with a candle, where she washes her bare hands because she is guilt-ridden. She is suffering psychologically for killing Duncan. She is guilt-ridden. Her mind is guilt-ridden. She is suffering because of guilty. Her mind is guilt-ridden, and that is the reason why she walks. Even though again while she is sleeping. That is the reason why again you could call that as a sleepwalking scene. Very, very famous. Okay, again a sleepwalking scene which appears in Act 5, Act 5, Scene 1. It's a stroke, it's a master stroke. Again, it's a master stroke when it comes to creative imagination. It comes to creative imagination, and it is the first and the last time in literature sleepwalking scene is used with a great and terrible dramatic effect. They may ask you this for short notes for 5 marks, sleepwalking scene, and they may also ask you about porter scene, Act 2, Scene 2, porter scene, where the porter who can be called as a modern day watchman, porter scene. There, a porter or the watchman of Macbeth's palace. Again, you can see Act 2, Scene 2. There, he gives a comic relief. The Potter scene gives a comic relief because he is very, very sarcastic. He, in his intoxicated mood, speaks out the real fact. He says that he is a watchman to the gates of hell. In fact, again, it is the Inverness he is watching. He is the watchman to the palace of Macbeth. So Macbeth is the king of hell, whereas this watchman, he considers himself as the watchman watching the gates of hell. So he calls himself as the watchman of the gates of hell. On the other side, like it is a sarcasm. It's a kind of sarcastic episode or a scene. So where though he speaks again in a sarcastic tone, if he is speaking the fact, he is speaking the fact. At the same time, it gives this particular scene, Porter scene, Act 2, Scene 2. There you can see it's a very, very important scene because it gives comic relief. It gives comic relief in the grim tragic atmosphere. In the grim tragic atmosphere, the entire scene is filled with. You can see owls are rooting, dogs are again even animals are growling, dogs are barking, no dogs are barking, crying. Okay, it means these are all indications of what some grave incident, some serious incident is going to happen. That is the reason why this particular scene is very, very important because it sets up the mood. It sets up the mood for Macbeth and his wife to kill Duncan. Porter scene, Act 2, Scene 2, and the sordid, tense, serious atmosphere of conspiracy and murder is slightly teased by the numerous speeches and incidents of the porter. So Shakespeare makes it easy for the audience to handle the serious situation, where Macbeth and his wife are planning to kill Duncan. So the significance, it's in fact enriches this particular scene. In fact, enriches the tragic significance. It enriches the tragic significance rather than weakening Porter's nonsenses verbatim, and aims at what? Aims to relieve. So he speaks nonsense, isn't it? Porter speaks nonsense. It's a nonsense verbatim. But it aims at what? It aims at relieving the tension. The aim of that particular scene is to relieve the tension, and the height of the tragic element, relieve the height of the tragic element. By contrast, you have a comic episode. On the other side, there is some tragic incident, some tragic episode is supposed to happen on the other side. Inside the castle, again, Macbeth and his wife is planning They are planning to kill Duncan. Again, outside the castle, you have Porter, again speaking nonsense, but he's also speaking the reality, isn't it? Through Porter, Shakespeare is creating a comic relief in the minds of the audience, and also at the time of grim, tragic atmosphere. It's very, very essential to have this scene at the time of grim, tragic atmosphere. At the time of grim, tragic atmosphere. So what happens later on in the play? So Macbeth tries to he kills, in fact, Macbeth kills Macduff family, Macduff's family, because according to prediction, it is, again, he comes to know that, he feels that since Macduff has joined hands with Markham, again, in order to get rid of all the troubles that comes in his way. So what he does, he kills one after the other. So he kills Duncan to be the king. Once he becomes the king, he kills Banquo to make it easy for his future progeny to be the future kings of Scotland. Whereas on the other side, Banquo's son Fleance has fled to the neighboring country England, and here he has got Macduff's family. Macduff has left to Ireland to join hands with Markham, and in fact Markham and Macduff, they are planning to invade Scotland with the 10,000 British soldiers. British soldiers. Again, there is another important factor. Another curious aspect about Macduff is he is not a man born out of his mother's womb through a natural birth. He was born due to cesarean section. There's another interesting factor which was not known to Macbeth. And at the time of fight, when Macbeth encounters Macduff on the battlements of his castle, when he encounters Macduff, he chides, he makes fun of Macduff. He says that no man born out of his mother's womb through a natural birth can kill him. Since you are born out of natural birth, from your mother, you can't do anything to me. So on the other side, Macduff in fact laughs at this statement by Macbeth. In fact, he says that he's not born to his mother through natural birth. He was born because of cesarean section from his mother's womb. Again, untimely right. He says, in fact, he was born through because it was untimely ripped. Untimely ripped means removed. Untimely ripped, R-I-P-P-E-D, ripped. So Act 5, Scene 8, lines 15 and 16, very, very important. Lines 15 and 16, Act 5, Scene 8, where Macduff reveals that he is not born to his mother through a natural process or through a natural process of birth. So at the same time, Macbeth is shocked to see, in fact, the forest of Burnham has started to move towards his castle. The 10,000 soldiers of British army, they have cut the limbs of these trees. They have cut the limbs of these trees from Burnham Forest, and in order to hide the exact numbers of soldiers from Macbeth. So what they have done is they have cut the limbs of the trees of this Burnham Forest, and they are marching towards the castle of Macbeth, which is called as Inverness. So what happens here? Macbeth feels that he has been cheated, has been ditched, has been cheated by those three witches, but he can't cope up, he can't do anything now. He has to succumb to the defeat and has been killed by Macduff. Macduff kills Macbeth, and that is how Macbeth dies, and that's how the tragic end of Macbeth is. That's how Macbeth dies. Again, that's how he meets with the tragic end. So what happens to Markham? Markham returns to England, but he rules returns to Scotland. He rules Scotland for a few years. But again, as I told you, he could not continue. Again, he could not continue tenure or reign for another few years, because it is Banquo's progeny or children who take charge of the kingdom, who has been Markham has been replaced by Banquo's children, and they become the successors of Scotland. They start to rule the Scottish kingdom. The Scottish kingdom. So the important questions as a reader that may arise in your mind is what are the main themes or concerns of Shakespeare in this particular tragic play called Macbeth. The first concern is ambition, ambition of Macbeth. The second theme is again guilty, betrayal, guilty in the form of even Macbeth feels guilty, and also Lady Macbeth is known for guilt-ridden mindset, and you have violence. Violence is another major theme of this play. Violence is significant theme. As I told you, it is believed that some critics, it has been happening since many years. That is what they feel, that whomsoever plays the role of Macbeth is normally killed. Whomsoever plays the role of Macbeth in theatre on stage is killed by some reason or the other. That is the reason why there is a belief that the name Macbeth itself brings bad luck. The name Macbeth itself brings bad luck. That is the talk in theatre, that the name Macbeth itself brings bad luck. That is the reason why most of the amateur or the serious theatre artists do not recommend or do not accept the role of Macbeth, to perform the role of Macbeth. They believe that Macbeth is associated with bad luck. The very name of Macbeth is associated with bad luck. And as I told you, there is heavy emphasis on supernatural elements like witches, dreams, spells, and ghosts to enhance what? To enhance the feeling of evil. To enhance the feeling of evil. So Shakespeare intentionally adopts the supernatural elements in the play, and at the same time, one of the Shakespeare's most, it is considered as one of the Shakespeare's most violent play. As I told you, elements of tragedy. So what are the elements of the tragedy that you see in the play? So protagonist Macbeth dies. That is the first element of tragedy. Did you see the protagonist, the hero, or the central character of the play? That is Macbeth. He dies. That is the first element. The second element is bloodbath. There is bloodbath. So you can see. So Macbeth kills people one after the other. He becomes a tyrant. He becomes what? A killing machine. A killing machine. At the same time, there is catharsis, release of believe. At the same time, is a anti-hero and also tragic hero. There is Amartia or fatal flaw. Oh, sorry, fatal flaw. Sorry, fatal flaw. Or what do you mean by that? Macbeth's ambition, or the obsession for kingship or power itself is what the fatal flaw in his character. Itself is the fatal flaw in his character. So what are the questions that you have to ask yourself? The first question is: have you ever given yourself into temptation? Have you ever felt tempted enough to achieve something, achieve something in a negative, by adopting a negative path? The second question is: do you believe in prophecies? Do you believe in prophecies or predictions? And the third important question is the difference between greed and ambition. What is the difference between greed and ambition? These are the questions that you have to put to yourself. Means these are the questions that you have to ask yourself. And you can also ask a question to yourself: do you believe in the state you reap what you saw? Isn't it? What you saw means what you saw. ನೀವೇನು ಬಿತ್ತನೆ ಮಾಡ್ತೀರಾ ಅದನ್ನೇ ನೀವು ಪಡ್ಕೊಂತೀರಾ. So do you believe in the state Time up. Thank you, one and all.
Good afternoon, everyone. In this session, I'm going to talk about very well established and very well known novel written by R.K. Narayan. As we all know, he is a very well established writer, not only in India but across the globe. So, regarding the introduction or a briefing about the author, R.K. Narayan, his full name Rasipuram Krishnaswamy Iyer Narayana Swamy. He was born in 1906 and later he died in 2001 at the age of 94. Had a long life. So Narayan's name was remembered at the times, and he is always associated. As we all know him through his work, what's that? The Guide, right? And Malgudi Days. You might have watched the recently telecasted, what we can say, serialized in Z Kannada, right? You might have been, or you might have watched that. So Narayan's name was remembered at the time as being one of the highest regarded Indian authors of English literary works as well as language. So this particular novel, The Financial Expert, was written in 1952, 6 years before Narayan authored the title, which cemented his status internationally as one of the greatest Indian authors. Okay, and later, after 6 years, he wrote a novel which got him name, fame, and status, everything. The title of the novel was The Guide. Okay, which was filmed, and who enacted in that movie? Devanand. Okay, a common theme in Narayan's writings was to set the events in the fictional world of Malgudi, an imaginary place. Especially, this resembles a South Indian, what we can say, a village or a town. So, this is an ordinary hamlet usually placed in South India. The title of, sorry, the name of the place or imaginary world of Narke Narayan is none other than Malgudi. So this simple construct gave Narayan legal meaning, and when basing his protagonist on real life incidents and locations, it also kept the stories relatable to an Indian, especially wide Indian audience, who could draw many a parallel between Malgudi and their own town. And if you start reading this novel, you feel that as though the characters are very close to you, and you've started feeling that they may be at the people at next door, like that. So we have a simple plot in this novel, and the literary review actually of this novel, or a critical review, which explores the themes, artifacts, and motives of the Indian novel. Okay, so this particular novel also provides a critique of accuracy of the book's depiction of microfinance in South India during the 20th century. The central character here is Margaya. Okay, he wanted to finance the needy persons, and he on higher rate of interest. The plot summary, though it looks like very simple plot summary, but it follows the rise and fall of protagonist Margaya. Am I clear? Am I audible? Yeah, good afternoon. Yeah, the title of the novel is The Financial Expert. Okay, written by R.K. Narayan. We have many characters as well as in this novel as well. So, let us have a brief look into the summary of the novel or the plot of the novel. The novel follows the rise and fall of the protagonist Markaya, and he may be considered as a anti-hero, not a neither a villain nor a hero. Okay, so he is journey as a relatively obscure middleman. He in the beginning, when the novel opens, he was a broker. So, under a banyan tree in Malgudi, he unofficially connects banks with borrowers while earning a deceitfully generous margin from the difference in interest rates. So, he used to help people indirectly, even he also had hidden agendas. Okay, because in order to the people always used to come to him before they move on to the bank, because the writing part work or application whatever, everything was being done by Margaya. And for that also he used to get some amount of perks from them. Some he used to get some bucks from the people, and at the same time he wanted to become um, rich by getting all these money deceitfully. Okay, so his irksome practice quickly earns the contempt of the local bank, and at the same time, he never let the people to get into the bank, because if they go to bank to hire a loan, and he will be what in a loss, right? And he was not getting any rate of interest or some money. So instead, he used to mislead the people, saying that the bank people will cheat you, don't go there, and whatever the amount you need, I will give you, like that. So his irksome practice. Normally, the bank people they wanted to bank him, so he quickly earns the contempt of the local bank, and even we readers also we really get distracted by this character, and even we feel very disgusted about his nature of act or else what even his attitude. So Markaya, believing that his persecution is motivated by lack of means and lower social status, he was to become a wealthy man, and that too financially, especially he wanted to grow financially higher, and a financial equal to the bank secretary, because the bank secretary goes and banks Markaya not to sit under the banyan tree before in front of the bank, because he used to stop the people who wanted to go to bank, no, and who wanted to hire bank services. So and he takes a oath. Okay, Shapatha. What kind of oath? He takes a oath that he one day he would become a wealthy man in that place, Malgudi, and the two financially equal to the bank secretary. So after dwelling on the nature of money and the position it affords its owners in the society, he thinks that money is everything. And if you have money, everyone will come at your doorstep, right? Come to your doorstep and they come to you in seeking your help or seeking your guidance, like that. So Margaya, he has a revelation that only money can fetch you everything. What name, fame, everything. Though you don't have character, he doesn't want all those ideals to be inculcated in him. What was there in his mind to earn money, whether in a bad way or a good way, doesn't matter. And by hook or crook, he wished to become a what financially expert. That's why the title of the novel is very important. What's that? The financial expert. Okay, so he wanted to grow rich because he wanted to avenge the secretary of the bank. So, and let us see how does he earn money and what was the means or what are the means of earning money in those days, especially what we can say maybe this is during the colonial era, okay, colonial period. So he senses that a new scheme, a financial innovation of sorts with the potential to revolutionize his life was approaching, what we can say, fruition. So Margaya, he meets Dr. Pal, an author, and the two at a ruined temple with the river Sarayu as a backdrop. And you know, in all of R.K. Narayan novels, we have the references of the same river, okay, and the same ruined temple in all of his novels. We could find this is a common features, and we always have the if the same place figures there, then imagine everything. It follows by the river, same temple, Mempi Hills, okay, and even the railway station. These are the common characteristic of R.K. Narayan novels. So, Markaya happens to meet Dr. Paul at a temple, and he is persuaded to invest in the rights to Dr. Paul's latest book, a Karma Sutra. Okay, especially the Karma, this style manual. Though through no effort of his own, the book becomes a fabulous success. Okay, he says that Margaya, because Dr. Pal knows Margaya has some amount with him, Even Dr. Paul, he wanted to publish his book. But those were the days, as I have told you, that it was very difficult to get somebody's work published. But Margaya, he somehow he trusts him and he says, "Okay, I will be the partner." But overnight, that book became famous, and it becomes a fabulous success. And this makes Margaya comfortably well. Okay, and what he was dreaming, it came true finally. But this brings a little comfort to Margaya. And he grows unsatisfied with the publishing business and he becomes wary of the endless correspondence over trivialities with book buyers. And for him, like Sita, we were discussing, no? And after a certain point, even he used to get disturbed or disgusted with the same business, and he doesn't want to continue with the same business because he was completely frustrated or disturbed and even felt irritated by the book buyers. So Margaya's dreams move quickly on, and using his own substantial capital, he forms a bank and he begins lending directly borrowers in his own right. So he wanted to grow financially, right? Are you all following me? And finally he achieves it and he becomes rich. And imagine, he starts his own and he establishes or he sets up his own bank and he starts lending money directly. So with his business, with this new business career flying high, Margaya's personal life or family relationships make for a poor contrast. It happens now when you're growing professionally higher to a higher level and your personal life somewhere it's going out of your hands. So the same thing happened even in the case of Margaya and his only son. His name is Balu, and he is also another important character in this novel. You should all know. One is Margaya, the protagonist of the novel. Second one is Dr. Paul. Okay, Dr. Paul, his whose book Margaya wanted to be a part of shareholder in publishing that book. Okay, then comes his own son Balu, who is lazy and irresponsible character. That's why I told you when he is growing higher at his professional level, but his personal life is going out of his hand. Balu shows apathy towards his academic studies and he doesn't want to continue his studies, despite the sums that Margaya spends on private tuition to encourage his pursuit. Balu develops a fondness for tobacco over textbooks. Okay, when this father he sends money to his son to study or to make him very well established and very well educated in the society. But this fellow, he spends the same amount on tobacco rather than on books. So, to flex his rising status, Margaya wrangles the position of school secretary and chair of school governors. You know, the position of secretary at a school level. So, and uses this power to bully teachers to extort preferential treatment for his son. So, he becomes the secretary where his son goes, to the school where his son goes. So, excuse, notwithstanding these efforts, Balu repeatedly fails the matriculation exam. And why does Margaya want to become the secretary? Because indirectly he wanted the teachers to award his son with great marks, with higher marks, and at the same time to teach him in a separate way, like that. You know, especially with giving preferential, so much of preference and even the preferential treatment to his son. But notwithstanding all these efforts, his son fails in matriculation exam. So much to his father's displeasure, he embodies little remorse or shame in because he failed, no? So shame in failure. Balu's disgraceful progression to adulthood appears to emanate from the spoiled childhood he has enjoyed under his father's success. So that's why when parents are quite negligible towards their what kids. like Balu, even most of the time it happens how it happened in the case of Margaya and Balu. And when Margaya is completely dedicated himself to become rich and to go financially higher, uh, but in the same way, on the other side, whatever was happening, Balu completely he started roaming with other friends, not giving so much of attention to his studies, and he's completely he is who is responsible for the spoiled childhood, Margaya, and even he is also responsible for his failure in matriculation. So, the failure of the son to fulfill his father's selfish ambition to have a son in university creates a rift between Margaya and Bali. Actually, Margaya wanted to send his son to university, but whereas Balu, can we expect him to go to university? And the same guy who failed in matriculation exam. So this creates a rift between both the father and son. So who subsequently runs away from family? Who? Balu. So fake news circulates that about Balu, and he is dead. Okay, the fake news of Balu's death, and the whole village people they started believing that he might have died because in fact he had what yellow, what exiled somewhere, and even Markaya himself doesn't know. So, as he considers traveling to Madras to plan funeral arrangements, a poignant moment occurs which reveals how the toxicity of Margaya's money, actually Margaya's money obsession or obsession of money, has become pervasive. And Margaya dismisses a kind of offer, okay? And he does, see, imagine even for his own son's funeral ceremony, he doesn't want to go to Madras. And anyhow, son is gone, then why to waste money? So, such kind of a miser who was Margaya. Of course, he is. We are discussing about this character. So Margaya dismisses this plan, this idea of offering what um, the funeral ceremony, but still somehow he made up his mind to go to Madras all alone. When his brother wanted to accompany him to Madras, he says it's simply a waste of money because first of all he is thinking not to go. Then at the same time, along with you taking some other, then even it burdens you financially. So he says that he dismisses a kind of offer given by his brother that even I would accompany you. No, no, he said directly no, no need to come along with me. So on the basis that he assumed it was merely an opportunity for the brother to enjoy a free trip out of whose money? Markaya's money. So he used to what highly calculative, and he used to calculate or measure uh, the bondage or rapport or relationships in money. Got it? So, in the context of growing animosity between Margaya and Dr. Pal, on the other hand, even first his personal life has gone, and which means that he is not happy because he wanted to send his son to university and he wanted to graduate him in a very well established university, and it went to dogs like that. So, on the other hand, somehow he had made money out of Dr. Pal's book, right? But here also, the animosity starts growing between Margaya and Dr. Pal. The latter decides to spread alarming rumors to the detriment of Margaya's bank. So Dr. Pal, when he asks him to give him a share, Margaya denies, and he doesn't agree to give him some amount. So what happens? It's quite common that Dr. Pal starts doing the disinformation campaign about Margaya's bank. So this triggers a run on the bank. So the financial catastrophe, which ensures brings the journey around to a full circle. Full circle means big zero, and every villagers, especially each and every person of village, they just don't want to uh, go there. And an impoverished Markaya, he is left to dwell on what could have been. And earlier when the novel opens, how was he? The same thing continues hereafter. So Margaya's final act, at the end of the novel, we could find that the final act of Margaya is devoid of wisdom, and it is perhaps a sign of the inescapable mindset that has found a home in his self. And somewhere he realizes, and what we sow, we reap. Sorry, right? Yeah. So with vigor, he implores his son to take up residence beneath the banyan tree in Malgudi and begin dealing in loans just as he once had. Okay, and he, of course, in middle of his life, he grew rich, and again at the verge of his retirement, yeah, which means retirement of life, he had to get back to the old position what once upon a time he had. So he wanted to send his son to the university, but unfortunately, what happens? He has he had to make his son to sit under the same banyan tree where he was sitting once upon a time. Hope you understood the story of the novel. Is there uh, any doubts regarding that, or shall I move on to the themes? Okay, important themes of the novel. What are the themes? Let us see what are the themes, because money, status, right? And the deceit of those who are in the pursuit of money, the crookedness of Margaya, right? And in order to get money, even he wanted to bully the people, deceive the people. So Margaya frequently incurs the wrath of other characters in the story, that he regularly dismisses this hostility as being the product of the lowest social status and wealth. And normally we find all these kinds of characteristics only in the middle class people, right? And this man, he doesn't want to identify himself with the lower status people, and people belong to lower class. So the reader, especially when we start reading this novel, we somewhat distant from Margaya, and we start disliking this character, and we can see through this rationalization, and however the grim reality of Malgudi's hierarchy is not up to dispute. So we all know, like R.K. Narayan is one of the three important novelists of India. At the time he was starting, he had started writing this novel along with R.K. Sorry, Rajarao and Mulkraj Anand. Okay, both all the three of the novelists were considered as the giants of Indian literature in English, the two in the field of with special reference to novel or fictional world. So the story, how it's set in the decades after 1920, when the colonial rule in India was drawing to an end, and by which point the British legacy of bureaucracy had been increasingly entrenched. Like British Babus, even Indians, few of the Indians, they wanted to lead a bureaucrat life, how they were influenced or how they were witnessed during colonized period. Okay, so even Margaya somewhere, even he wanted to bully innocent people, like how British people, they had bullied us for 200 years, right? So the discontent caused by this order rings loudly through the text. What was that? If somebody is innocent, definitely there are people to bully them. There are people to deceive them. So it is particularly resonant in the context of India's notoriously durable caste system, which continues to impact people even today, right? Can we root out casteism from Indian soil? No. And can we do root out that what we can say dowry system and other caste conflict? No, not at all. And somewhere I have read that even after 1,000 years, it is impossible to root out casteism in India. Is it true? Sometimes we have to say yes, maybe like that. And though there are what we can say we are modernized, we are educated, and we are so-called intellectuals, but still we could find these social events even prevails even after 100 years or so many thousand years. So the deceit of those who are in the pursuit of money. This is also one of this also forms one of the forms the theme of the novel. So Narayan uses broad brush to paint a very bleak image of the strand of humanity, and he says when the matter of money comes and there is no humanity left in any human being. So there is no value for virtue, right? So with virtually no subtlety, the readers, especially the audience, we witness the destruction of institutions because of money. So, for example, Margaya, let us take an example of Margaya, and he appears to follow religious custom with a cynical motivation. And when you read the novel, even what we have provided you, and right now what you have in your hands, the study materials, if you are thorough with that material, it is enough and very well written notes. Okay, and if you are thorough with that, and if you go through that notes, then it is more than enough because even I have gone through that. Very well written, simple, and if you one by one reading you can understand the story. So Margaya appears to follow religious custom with a cynical motivation. He is a hardcore religion. Okay, so he values only the output, the potential rewards, rather than the humble application of faith and worship. Got it. So the institution of the family, according to social scientists, even marriage as well as family is considered as institution, right? So the institution of the family is also reduced to being a mere vessel for advancement. So Margaya, he acts disrespectfully towards a horoscope pandit who plays a very minor role in the novel. And when an unwealthy match is suggested as a wife for his son. Okay, so Margaya treats his brother who lives next door practically like a stranger. And this is what happens though we have seen so many siblings, brothers, and when they grow old, they just don't want to look at each other. So this is what R.K. Narayan is portraying in all of his novels, and we start feeling that as though it is happening exactly in front of us. So, in a sober reflection of Margaya's single mindedness, the author gives no name to his wife. Despite her featuring prominently throughout the novel, even Margaya's wife, she plays a minor role, but nowhere we could find her name. Okay, Margaya, again, he is the characterization of an evil money man because he is completely behind money, and we, the readers, we struggle to note any discernible silver lining in his character or personality. We feel that maybe at the end of his life he may learn a lesson because most of the characters they learn, no, they do the same thing at the end of their like for example, Maul Flanders, even at her end of her life, she realizes and she becomes penitent. Penitent means she wanted to regret for what she has done, right? So, in fact, the protagonist is positively loathsome and does not endear himself to readers even by the close of the story. And do we have a silver lining that he may change at the end of the novel? No, it does not occur. But in spite of realizing his mistake, he doesn't want to openly admit that. Instead, he makes only through his attitude or through his actions we may realize that he might have what we can say rejuvenated, or he might have changed a bit. So, how do we consider this novel as? And Markaya begins or he begins as a trickster, or to begin with Margaya and other characters, we readers we have to understand all these characters through the writing of R.K. Narayan, and that with the help of his explanation. So the tone of corruption, that is also very important here. and that Margaya is so content in facilitating their activities. And despite recent incremental improvements, Margaya just wanted to make money. That's all. So during his search for the red lotus, especially in the novel, he happened to meet Dr. Pal, author of a 150-page manuscript, Bedlife or the Science of Marital Happiness. So, this is the title of that book. Especially, uh, please, you should remember the title of the book, that is Domestic Harmony. Okay, the title of the book, which was written by who? Dr. Pal, is Domestic Harmony. And it is really an amalgam of the Kama Sutra or the writings of Havelock Ellis. So, promoted as sociology, but in reality, a work of prudence. This is what you all know. I think I made myself clear, and you want me to go through the summary once again. And as you all know, these are main characters which appear in this novel. To begin with, Margaya, and later the bank secretary, who plays a very minor role. Then comes a major character, Dr. Paul. Okay, then Madan Lal, actually, he is the proprietor of the garden printery on Market Road. Okay, actually, he publishes that manuscript, because when we have a scene or incident between Margaya and Dr. Paul, he comes with a 150 pages manuscript. Okay, he wanted Margaya's help to publish it. So it is partnership with Markaya under the title Despot or Domestic Harmony. It becomes successful overnight, right? And out of this publishing this book only, he becomes rich. So, and on the other hand, Balu is also another important character, major character, right? Um, the themes, as I told you, that since this novel it discusses the rise and fall of monetary wealth and success or social status of Margaya, even both money and status, social status, which form the ground for this novel. Okay, then important theme is that the relationship between free will and divine will. What do you mean by free will and divine will? Though Margaya, he doesn't want to believe anyone, and normally he doesn't believe anyone, but he believes only in God. So free will and divine will, and the institution of family or the importance of family is also very important. You all should be thorough, and how he used to what though he has affection towards his son, but when Balu fails in matriculation examination, we could find a rift between them, and his love towards our love and affection towards his son, it flops there, it goes off there itself. So the relationship between free will or divine will, or which is another significant theme, and which attributes his success to his own endeavors more than he shows gratitude to the gods. Because every day I told you, he is a religious big god, and every day he used to pray to become rich. But when he grows rich, he doesn't want to pay any courtesy or thanks to God. Instead, he always beats his own drum, saying that only because of his own will he becomes rich. So, Margaya, not only in his business dealing or and also in his treatment of wife, Margaya puts himself first. That even when he convinces himself that success will benefit the family, he is impervious to Mina's wishes. Yeah, somewhere in the novel we could find that what's the name of his wife, Mina. Okay, then the importance of family or the institution of family or family relationships also very important. The importance of family is another key theme, right, which is developed by the sufferings that Balu inflicts on his parents, and where we could find what kind of a rapport or affection or love prevails among between the parents and child. Okay, hope you are all following me. Yeah, yeah. Don't worry, I'll explain. Still, yeah. 20 minutes there with us. While I'm delineating the characters, I'll tell you everything. And the importance, especially how Balu inflicts being irresponsible son, how he pain and how he inflicts pain on his parents, and later his wife Brinda. This is also very important. Somebody asked me to talk about Brinda. Yeah, so Banu allowed to think of his own wants and desires, and which always he is also somewhat like selfish and self-centered, like like his father, right? At least his father, he wanted to take care of the whole family, but he is not like that. So he's so selfish, and he's always think of his own desires, wants, and which gravitates away from his family, and he falls under false influence, and he goes against his own father, and he becomes a friend of Pal, who happens to be who is the actual enemy of what Amargaya. And then his egotistical behavior masks that what should have been the ideal marriage. So much so that his wife actually takes steps to correct the situation. Who is his wife? Brinda. But Brinda must think not only of her own role as wife, but also as a mother. See, and he will like she wants to take care of her husband, not like as a being wife, but also as a mother. So here in this novel, gender relationships within the family is also very important, because the theme of gender relations is largely subsumed under family in this novel. Both Brinda and Meena, they take initiative primarily out of motivation by maternal concern. Okay, Meena is who wife of Margaya, and mother of Banu and Brinda. Both the ladies, they wanted to correct their family, and they wanted to safeguard their family, and they voluntarily they take initiative, because because they are all after all mothers, right? And so this perspective on female priorities enforces the theme of patriarchy as the dominant social system in India. And this is what Anita Desai was talking about and talking against, right, in her novel, even Kamala Das. So even R.K. Narayan, he wanted to project the status of women or role of women, though they are strong, though they are capable of handling the situation or handling the things, but they never led to lead. Why? Because of the social setup, because the patriarchal social setup or patriarchy and so on. So, and the subversive steps that wives must take to achieve their own goals when they differ from those of their husbands. Okay, this is what happens. And at the conclusion of the novel, we know that Margaya calmly alludes to Balu's earlier request for his inheritance upon attaining the age of 18, and directs him to the old tin box that served an office under the banyan tree. And where Margaya, he used to go and sit under the banyan tree with a small tin box. Okay, and the old tin box was later at the end of the novel. It passed on to who? His son Balu, not the huge property what he had dreamt of. So seemingly remarkable or unremarkable sometimes of Indian life and of the novel, and which is because we readers, we never expect such kind of unhappy conclusion of the novel, but still, as I have told you that what we saw always vary. So though many and great events take place in the novel, and though riches have come and gone, our life will continue as determined by forces, right, beyond the comprehension of mere mortals. And life, this is a message we get life is not a bed of roses, and it is always filled with ups and downs of fun, or and this is always we have to face hurdles in our life and so many obstacles, and especially R.K. Narayan has delineated all the characters from minor characters to a major character in a very what we can say very convincing manner. And as Margaya meets Arul Das, he is also very important character. Dr. Paul, Mr. Lal, the inspector of police, and the priest of Lakshmi temple. And this is all very important. And he has new insights into life. And all these characters, whomever he meet throughout the novel and even in his life, they they play a very important and significant role. But unfortunately, or temporarily, we seem that he has new insight into life that changes his actions and his attitude throughout with these characters, or with the entry of these characters into his life. So Margaya, and let us start exploring one by one the characters, delineate the characters. Margaya, as we all know, he is aware that his grandfather and his granduncles were corpse bearers. Okay, so he developed, which means that they belong to lower class or lower caste, and he doesn't want to continue the same profession. So he nevertheless he somehow he managed to rise above his origins or his heritage or inheritance. So through some different means of life, and he is hardworking. He is frugal to the point of penuriousness, and he just don't want to lead a life of a poverty. He just want to come out. And his actual real name of his wife is full name of his wife is Meenakshi. Okay, Meenakshi, he treats his wife in an unworthy way, and he doesn't praise her because she's so innocent, and but still somewhere he is completely relying on her, and only we readers we could understand. So he treats his wife Meenakshi as unworthy of being appraised of his business dealings and unworthy of love or even of respect. So there is no word for love in his dictionary. I can say in a way, to put it in a simple form. And secondly, he regards Balu as a projection of himself. Got it? Because he is irresponsible and disloyal, right? He is not at all loyal to his father. And so he regards Balu as a projection of himself, and he tries to force him into a mold quite unsuited to him. Where we realize that when he wanted to send him to university, but this fellow he doesn't deserve to get into college, then imagine way to university. So he shows him neither paternal affection nor true understanding, but wants him to achieve some academic success so that he might become a government officer or a business success or a great businessman. So by indulging him after his return from Madras, he merely ensures Balu's future failure. And he could realize, and this boy of mine, he is not going to achieve anything in his life. Got it? So, in the words of uh, his own in the novel, R.K. Narayan, he describes the situation like this. It seems certain that the son, like the father, will never pass on to the grade of people who are wealthy and not merely rich. Okay. So Arul Das, let us know about another important character, Arul Das. However, although he plays a seemingly minor role as chief servant of the cooperative land mortgage bank, he is an important foil to Margaya, because whose stupidity and whose self-interest and also his deviousness are contrasted to the values that have been represented for years by the bank. Okay, so cooperation, frugality, regularity, punctuality, moderation, and caution. All these things we could find in this character. So Arul Das, he is ready to address Markaya on terms of equality, but with politeness. But it is not a reciprocal attitude. So Arul Das, he has an inherent dignity as a functionary that suggests a basis in Christian theology and in a philosophy of service and equality, and service to the employer and a customer alike. But even the minor characters like Balu's wife Brinda, though she plays a very minor role, and the inspector of police, such as, and the mystic owner of Madras Theatre, and these are all they add colors to the novel. And if you start reading these characters or understand these characters, you have to have a at least a reading, one reading of this novel. And Meena, to give you in a simple manner, Margaya, he knows he is owner of a small business in his 30s when the novel opens, and Meena is in a what simple Meena. This is how she has been addressed in the novel. Meena, Margaya's wife, is uncomprehending, confident, and we can consider her as a scapegoat. Then Balu is their son, who is first seen as a spoiled, uncontrollable boy. Later he is a failure at school. And Dr. Pal, he is a self-styled journalist, author, and sociologist. And he is very lean, confident 30-year-old when he appears in chapters. Okay, we get introduced to this character. So Dr. Pal, he has a seemingly intellectual pattern that asks Margaya. And by looking at Pal, and Margaya also, he seems of this kind of character like that. So periodically he turns up to direct Margaya's life. So at first his influence on Margaya is benign. Then later it is Dr. Pal who sells him the book. Okay, what's that? Harmony, something I told you. No? So that is very important. Domestic harmony. So yeah. Then it is he who moves Margaya into the unfortunately situated place, and it was Dr. Pal responsible for the success of Margaya to be a very rich man. And later, at the end of the novel, again, Dr. Pal who encourages Balu's debauchery and who takes revenge for the assault by spreading the rumors that ruin Margaya. Okay, so Brinda, Balu's wife, a beautiful, sweet 17-year-old, the daughter of a man who owns a small tea estate. Okay, at first she is as delighted with her young husband as Margaya is with her and her station. So when Balu mistreats her, however, she confides in her father-in-law. And these complaints lead to his attack on Dr. Pal and later in the collapse of his fortunes. And Margaya is comforted by the fact that Brinda's baby will now be living with him like that. Only Margaya who used to support this small character, Brinda, very innocent, sweet girl. Then Madan Lal, very minor character, Madan Lal, he is the principal character, sorry, he is the main printer at Malgudi, whose shop lies in Marketplace. Okay, a large red-faced man who is aware of his own importance. Then Arul Dawes, I told you, he is the head servant at a cooperative bank. The old and he is an old Christian wrinkled with a white mustache, and he has the air of authority. Then the inspector, Shastri, these are all very minor characters. So this is how we could also find some comic element in this novel, which is very well balanced by our author, and how genuinely Narayan has portrayed all these characters, and he mirrors the society as it is when where he lived in the same society, and he also talks about the Hindu philosophy. Almost it excludes the possibility of tragedy, and there is never a clear good or bad dichotomy that would produce melodrama. So it is this depth and rare handling of characters and circumstances that give Narayan's novel or work such an inimitable quality. So, the protagonist of this novel and other characters who all involved in molding the life of Margaya or Balu is very, very important. So, this is how the novel ends, and these are the themes or the characters which were delineated or portrayed by what R.K. Narayan in this novel. Any doubts so far? We're all busy discussing the Telegram group. Huh? Any doubts? If you have any doubts, please ask me, or can I? I just wanted to talk about Shelley's Ode to West Wind, okay? Because this is also prescribed for you this year. And Shelley, he he is well known as romantic poet. Okay, he is also very well known for his odes, especially his poem "Ode to the West Wind." This is also prescribed for your study. And this poem, when it appeared in the Prometheus Unbound in 1820, this poem was conceived and chiefly written in a wood that skirts the Arno near Florence. So the note, the especially the poem begins abruptly, and the note is interesting that it shows the poem came out of a specific experience, and the title is also very important: "Ode to the West Wind." So the imagery of the poem suggests a natural phenomena that is observed while it is taking place. So the fact that it was written near Florence, Dante's city, which may explain why Shelley used terza rima, okay, the stanza of Dante's Divine Comedy, but rare in English poetry. In this poem, Shelley has used the technique of terza rima, okay, and which means that Tarzarima is a series of triplets with interlocking rhymes ABA, BCB, CDC, etc. Like that. ABA, BCB, CDC, rhyming scheme, no? So Shelley modified the pattern by ending each of the five sections of the poem with a climactic couplet. So in this poem, Shelley, as in another poems like To a Skylark or The Cloud, he uses the poetic technique of myth with which he had been working on a large scale in Prometheus Unbound. So, according to him, the west wind is a spirit, as is the skylark. So, both in the poem To a Skylark and even West Wind, he considers or he explains these natural things or creatures as the spirit. So it possesses great powers, and for this very reason, Shelley can pray to it, and for what he feels, he is deeply in need of it. So he falls upon the thorns of life, and he believes a heavy weight of ours has chained and bound. So unfortunately, readers seemed uninterested in in his poetry, and democracy was not making progress in the Europe of 1819. So Shelley's poem "Ode to the West Wind" is a very good example of Shelley's poetic talent or his poetic work, and it is heaping up similes and metaphors. This poem is full of similes and metaphors, and it is Shelley's extravagant fondness for metaphorical language that makes him all too often obscure, and which brought him a very success and so much of name, fame, success on his way. And he is prone to be swept away by words and to be mastered by them, and rather than to be a master of them. Okay, so the leaves are in the poem, and he writes like the leaves are driven from the presence of his west wind divinity, like a ghost from an enchanter flee. So the simile is not based in reality, nor is it functional. No doubt it comes from Shelley's very early reading, much of which consisted of pulp fiction that dealt in enchanters. And in the beginning, in the very first stanza, he says that where wind has supreme powers and how it drives the leaves, that too, the dried leaves. So in the second stanza of the poem, he talks about the clouds. Okay, the clouds are at once leaves shoot from the tangled bones of heaven and ocean. So they are also angels, what we can say here in his words, angels of rain and lightning. So they are also apparently the logs of the approaching storm. So in the first stanza he talks about west wind, and second stanza cloud, and in the third stanza again the west wind is the awakener of the Mediterranean Sea. Okay, and he in the first stanza he talks about west wind's work on the ground. In the second stanza he talks about wind's supreme what power, how it makes the clouds to rain. Okay, and in the third stanza, wind is awakener of the meditator. It works on the sea and a lull to sleep by its own currents and seeing in its sleep. So old palaces and towers overgrown with azure moss and flowers. So these are the lines he uh, write, writes in order to what we can say the personify the wind. So the effect of the west wind on the Atlantic is to cut it into chasms as with a huge bladed weapon, and to inspire fear in the sea growing on the bottom. So the contrast between the simplicity of language in the stanzas 4 and 5, where Shelley is talking about himself. So first, second, third stanza, he is talking about the work of and the power of wind, and fourth and fifth stanza, he's completely talking about himself. Okay, so he describes the metaphors fall so thick and fast that the reader should perhaps simply yield without resistance to the incantation of the language. That language he uses is completely different. Okay, in the last two stanzas. So maybe we feel that the poet sometimes succeeds by sheer accumulation of language, or some critics of his poems, they say that they have noted Shelley's hypnotic power, okay, in using his words or language. So the breathless sweep of accumulated language may perhaps be felt justifiable by the reader in the poem, of especially poetic, violent mind of poem. So something which has the power of the wind is conveyed by the sheer mass of mellifluous figurative language of the first three stanza and the last two stanzas. Any any doubts or queries so far? Yeah, Ode to the West Wind. I told you that Ode to the West Wind I am discussing about. And here he talks about how wind plays a very major role in on three places, on the three platforms, on the first the grounds, on the earth, then in the sky, then on the sea. In the last two stanzas, he discusses that what how the poet he expects the change to be happen not only on the ground, sea, or water, even in the mindset of people, okay, human beings. Any doubts so far? Yeah, regarding Balu, as I have told you, he is very stubborn, irresponsible, and very what we can say urchin. Okay, and from the boyhood and till the adulthood, there is no change at all. This is what R.K. Narayan has portrayed, and even in one of the Margaya himself, he feels that he may be an exact replica of Mark. Okay, even when he was child, he was like that. But there is a slight difference between Balu and Margaya. Margaya wanted to what go away from his family heritage, because I told his in the beginning he starts mulling over the things. Like how his father and forefathers were once upon a time, they were corpse bearers, right? But do we find any act of their characteristic features in him? No. But instead, he wanted to come away or come out of their legacy for that, I can say. So, but here we never find such kind of dedication or focus or ambition in Balu, because he started enjoying his life thinking that whatever my father earns, definitely it will pass on to me. And unfortunately, even he becomes the friend of his own father's enemy, Dr. Pang, right? So, if you read your material, definitely you can understand. Any other questions? Thank you. Thank you all. And uh, please take up this classes or your study seriously, and prepare well for your exams. Don't neglect. And if you have any problems, please get back to us, and we will be there to support you. And don't waste your time thinking that your examination will be in the month of, and still you have time, like, and don't start preparing at the 11th hour. Thank you. I think it's time. Thank you. All the best for your exams. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Good evening to everyone, the students. And remember, in the noon session, in the morning session, we were discussing about a criticism. So I hardly take a couple of minutes and wind up this preface to Shakespeare by Samuel Johnson. Preface to Shakespeare, as I told you, it's a criticism. It's a critical treatise. A critical treatise in the sense, like, sharing or expressing one's view on a particular writer, a particular text. So here, Samuel Johnson, he's expressing his views on Shakespearean plays in common. And I said we discussed, the merits and demerits and all that. Okay. Okay. So here, let me discuss the last few demerits of Shakespearean, writing styles, and in its confined to his plays, and then I'll wind up and I get into another text, that's Tagore's Gitanjali. I'll take a few songs of Gitanjalis and I deal with. Let's see, permits. I will also share my views on Nehru's autobiography at an extent. This is the last day, and the fifth day. I need to touch upon even both the Indian writers. So coming back to preface to Shakespeare, see that the first demerit of Shakespeare has Samuel Johnson saying. See, you remember keeping in mind the words of F.R. Lewis and Inverdi, a vision, and then the word of T.S. Eliot, the tradition. So both require when the writer get into this kind of projecting a world or a sect of society in his writing. So in a way, Shakespeare, though he's a great, such a outstanding dramatist, playwright, and somehow he also had some lacunas. So what are the? I'll tell you some few demerits, and I'll just wind up this text. And he says that he's not so zealous in the distributions of poetic justice. So when it comes to poetic justice, Shakespeare is not so jealous. He was not in kind of utsahadaliralam poetic justice na padbekantande. So what do you mean by this poetic? I was talking today morning. The poetic justice is a literary device. It's a literary device in which ultimately a virtue is rewarded and the virtuous is punished. ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಸದ್ಗುಣ ಅನ್ನೋದು ಗೆಲ್ಲಬೇಕು ಒಂದು ಅಲ್ಟಿಮೇಟ್ ಆಗಿ. ಸೊ poetic justice is a literary device, ಒಂದು ಸಾಹಿತ್ಯ ಪ್ರಕಾರ in which ultimately the virtue is rewarded. ಒಂದು ಸದ್ಗುಣ ಅನ್ನೋದು ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಸತ್ಯ ಮೇವ ಜಯತೆ ಅಂತ ಏನ್ ಹೇಳ್ತೀವಿ ಹಾಗೆ, the truth should prevail and the vicious is punished. ಒಂದು ಕೆಟ್ಟದ್ದು ಅಂತ ಏನ್ ಹೇಳ್ತೀವಿ, vicious tendencies ಅಂತೆಲ್ಲ ನಾವೆಲ್ಲ ಕೇಳಿದ್ದೀರಾ. The vicious tendencies in the sense like a very very cruel attitude, the kind of a demeaning behavior. So here Shakespeare is not at all so jealous in terms of giving the poetic justice. This is a very, very important demerits of Shakespeare. It's very important. Whereas a character like Cordelia, and she suddenly led a tragic death. So it has been affected Samuel Johnson so bitterly, and he quite often remembers, and the scene, it terribly haunts him. So that is very important. The scene very terribly haunts him, and even he records that in the first preface of his Shakespeare, that in the death of Cordelia traumatized him for a while. So the poetic justice was not properly given. He was not so zealous, he was not so enthusiastic, or he doesn't even come forward to give a poetic justice in his play. This is the first important demerit of Shakespeare. So I reiterate at this juncture, it's the first demerit. And then, so the second important demerits of Shakespeare is he doesn't show a keen interest in the constructions of his plots. So the plots are not being systematically constructed. Because as I told you, there is a disjointed in terms of plot creations. He has his own whims and fancies in terms of creating a plot. So they often appear to have been put together in a hasty, slovenly, and lack of systematized, symmetrical manner. So there is not kind of, so they have written in a hasty manners. So what happens further, his defect is that his tragedies are labored and strained, with the result that tend to be tedious and obscure. Tragedy and bandaga. See, I was talking about his comedies. Comedies are, Evans is a true genius geniusness because his skill is only emphasized on his comedies, so well constructed. Whereas when it comes to tragedy, he says, Samuel Johnson tells that the defect is his tragedies. Only in tragedy we can find his defect, because they seem to be a labored and to be a tedious and obscure. Tumba drag ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಹೋಗ್ತಾನೆ tragedies ಗಳನ್ನ. Okay, and for example, the best example is the Hamlet. The indecisiveness. He doesn't take a revenge on his uncle. Isn't it? He doesn't take a revenge at all, and he, to be or not to be, shall I kill him or not? That kind of a mental traumatic conditions. It could be any character for that matter, King Lear and Macbeth, or even in Othello. They have their own problems. But they weren't so firm about it. Even in Othello too, like suspecting and all that. So when it comes to tragedy, Shakespeare seems to be invested a lot of labor. ತುಂಬಾ ಕಷ್ಟಪಟ್ಟು ಟ್ರಾಜಿಡಿನ ಬರ್ದಿರೋ ತರ ಇದೆ ಅಂತ ಸ್ಯಾಮ್ಯುಯಲ್ ಜಾನ್ಸನ್ ಹೇಳ್ತಾನೆ. And further, and he says that there seem to be a tedious and obscure, not so much of clarity in tragedies, and it seems to be a very tedious anta kuda heltane. We don't see such kind of spirit while reading tragedies anta. This is another important demerit of Shakespeare, according to Samuel Johnson. And the last, there are two other demerits, and then I'll wind up this text. And he says that Shakespeare's stage is often based on the bombastic diction. When a person uses a lot of bombastic diction, like tough words which are not so familiar to listen. And for example, when you look at restoration literature poems, like it will be Rape of the Lock or Absalom and Achitophel and Macflock, for that matter. So the writers use a lot of bombastic word, so much of express, where the meanings are not being conveyed, metaphorical languages, and use of dictions are completely tougher to understand. So Shakespeare, he's did that. Shakespeare has done that. He shouldn't have done that. He should have used a common language which can be appealed to people. He should have avoided using this kind of a bombastic language. So he says that Shakespeare's stage is often barred with, completely based on the bombastic diction and needless, the kind of quibbles, unnecessary debates, discussions, criticism goes on frequently, and that should not have been there. That you can see whenever in kind of Portia's a scene in Merchant of Venice, the debates and all that. And in short, the last demerits. So he uses unnecessary diction and the bombastic diction, unnecessary language. So this is a demerits. And after that, he says that he uses excessive quibbles. As I told you, the incident of criticism he brings in his place. That she shouldn't have done that. So these are the observations. The last observation, then I'll wind up the text. It's non-observance of the unities of time and place. And he did not give a prominence to unities of time and place. It doesn't follow time, it doesn't follow place, only his actions. So action is more in Shakespearean place, but not the time and not the place. That means it's almost like violating what Aristotle says, that a tragedy must have three unities of time, place, and action. Time has to be properly followed, and action and place and order. So everything, there's go hand in hand. That should not have been followed here. This is not followed here. This is what he says. And then, and the indispensability of action as being scrupulously preserved by Shakespeare in all his dramatic works. So only he maintained the action, but not any kind of place and time. So now, dear learners, I just so far probably I've taken around 40 minutes. I mean, since in previous class, I think I gave a justice to this. A preface to Shakespeare by Samuel Johnson, and what you have to concentrate on. This is like you have to read the text again and again. Read the text and see how Johnson is expressed his views, how he has written it, and how has he bifurcated the merits and the demerits, and what are the scenes that he brings, and how does he categorize his comedies, tragic comedies, romantic comedies, and tragedies, and what are the distinctive remarks from one place to another. So that you should do it, and I wish you good luck, and please you read it, and you can always get back to me for discussion, whatever, because we are here very much. So now the next important thing is that I'll get into the next important song. It's a collections of song, that is a Gitanjali by Tagore. We know that Gitanjali is the classic text of the Indian literature. I must tell something about it. Gitanjali is a book of poems written by Rabindranath Tagore. So Gitanjali, it's originally written in Bengali language, written by Rabindranath Tagore, and there are more than 157 songs. Poems here. They consider as songs, and they also called as poems. And all the poems are in the Bengali language. You know that they're written in a Bengali language, and it has been translated into several languages in the world languages. And later it has been translated to English also. And the Tagore won the Nobel Prize for Literature on November 14, 1913. So he got his Nobel Prize for this book, and we all know that it's a most important poem which is read by everywhere in all the nook and the corner of the world, and in the academic schools and colleges. And it is also contained the special poem known as the Where the Mind is Without Fear. So this poem is a very important and very significant. You all must have read it, isn't it? So this is one thing. And coming back to this poem, so how does he categorize? How he categorizes, the different themes of Gitanjali. The whole Gitanjali, what are the major themes it's contained? Like how does he bifurcate the more than 157 songs? What are the basic message that they carry? So these are the one. See, even before that, I must tell you, the great writer, the T.S. Eliot, the 20th century critic, the poet, and the dramatist, he shares a word. What does he say about Gitanjali? Gitanjali Kavita Mele, on the book Mele, T.S. Eliot, Nama Isranta, the great writer of modern literature, T.S. Eliot, on the Pada Heltara, on the Vakya Heltara. What does he say? It's a great poetry which expresses in a perfect language a permanent human impulses. This is the line he says it. The entire Gitanjali, it expresses in a perfect language and permanent human impulses. So I must tell you, as I was talking about romantic poetry, like how Wordsworth, he celebrates the kind of the pantheism. He's a pantheist because he surrendered himself to the nature, because he thinks that the nature is the best harmony to everybody. Nature is the best harmonious bondage to everyone. So there is a man, nature, and society. The way it revolves around, in the same way, Tagore's Gitanjali revolves around three important concepts: that the man, God, and the soul, the inner soul. So there are three important concepts. Let me tell you, there are four important messages, the themes which are there in the poem. The point number one, the lyrics, the entire 100+ lyrics, they explore four important themes. The point number one, see, this will be asked for 10 marks, that for exam point of view. And whenever I describe a point, I certainly take down the number itself, because I've been taking lines from the original text poetry. See, the relationship, the point number one. So the Gitanjali explores the relationship of God and the human soul. This is point number one. They explore the God and the human soul. And the point number two, it explores the God and the nature. And point number three, nature and the human soul. And four, of the individual soul and humanity. So these are the four important things that the poems revolves around. So which are very important here? God, human soul, what do we call Jivatma? God, human soul, nature, and then humanity. God, nature, human soul, and humanity. So if Wordsworth is a pantheist, who admires nature, who surrendered himself to the nature, so here the poet, he become one with the God. He surrendered himself to the God. It's a kind of a religious poem, the very much religious poem, and he's called as a mystic poem. Mystic poem in the sense like mysticism, mystic elements. Whereas we have a William Blake of romantic, precursor of romanticism. He's also called as a mystic poet because he talks about the poems like the Tiger and the Lamb, where he praises the power of God, who is a creator. And he surprises how the God can create. Is this the hand that created thee and the ಹೇಳ್ತಾನೆ. ಒಂದ್ ಕಡೆ ಲ್ಯಾಂಬ್ ಅನ್ನ ಕ್ರಿಯೇಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀರಾ, ಒಂದ್ ಕಡೆ ಟೈಗರ್ ನ ಕ್ರಿಯೇಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀರಾ. Lamb is symbolizes for innocent, whereas the tiger represents the experiences. So how could it possible to the God? So there is a mysticism. A writer, he brings the issues of God, the power of God, the dominance of God, the kind of extreme power, the supreme power of God in his poetry in a different way. He glorifies them. Getting my point? So how William Blake's glorify the God, the power of God in his poems like Songs of Innocence and Songs of Experience, in both the Lamb and the Tiger. In the same way here, this poet, our poet, the Gitanjali Tagore, he's also called as a mystic poet. He glorifies society. He glorifies the God. He glorifies the nature. He glorifies the human psyche, human soul, and humanity. And then coming back to this. See, the central theme of Gitanjali is devotional. It expresses the yearning for devotee for reuniting with the divine. That means a soul has to reunite with the divine. So he has to make a reunion with the God and the divinity. So this is the concept. And after that, let me get into the first poem. So keep this in your mind. And there are four important poems. But I'll take up four important points for the exam point of view. I just explained these four important points, and let me see. I just tell the title, the beginning, the title of the poem, and I try to give the gist about the poems. And after that, we get into other texts possible if the time permits. The first poem, that is where the mind is without fear and the head is held high. You all have read the poem. This is such a classic poem and read by everybody, as I told you. So where the mind is without fear and the head is high. It is, here the countryman should be fearless. And he's instilling a kind of the kind of a braveness in everyone. So here it is such an inspiring poem. The poet prays to God for the spiritual emancipation of his country. So the poet is, praise for God for the spiritual emancipation of his country. The kind of a spirituality has to be, a need to the country. So a true freedom lies in full of virtues living. Therefore, the poet prays to God that his countrymen may be fearless. So the countrymen, it is a kind of a message to the countrymen that you should be fearless. You should not be fearful. You should be fearless, and it should be truthful. Be fearless and be truthful and be rational, he says. You should be rational and God-fearing. You have to worry for the God. If a person doesn't worry for the God, that he does all sorts of illegal things, isn't it? It does all sorts of anti-societal things. So everybody should one with the God. They should always pray God, and one should be God-fearing. So he says in the poem that countrymen should be fearless and they should be truthful. Okay, some of you are putting some questions. Yes, fine. So what happened? Fearless, truthful, rational. One should be rational. You should think what is right and what is wrong, isn't it? So he has to inculcate. He's going to instill or inculcate this kind of values in the mind of the people. And noble and generous. One should be noble and one should be generous. And knowledge should be free, and therefore you should be no divisions of caste. A country should be no divisions of cost. Like, we have this kind of, the entire, the humanitarian concept. So ultimately, what prevails? The humanity prevails. So that is important. The kind of humanity that has to be prevailed. That's what he's saying. See, I repeat, the poet is instilling in the readers, in the countrymen, the kind of fearless, truthful, rational, God-fearing, noble, and the generous. And knowledge should be free, and there should be no divisions of caste, and there should be no divisions of creed. There should be no different caste and different creed, different religion shouldn't be there, or nationality, that we all are one. It is to be noted that the heavens of freedom, for every individual, for everybody, this has to be a heaven of freedom. One has to celebrate the freedom, and for which the poet prays is not a heaven of political and economic freedom, but of spiritual freedom. But how the country is today, it is completely indulged with. The country indulged with completely with a heaven of political economic freedom. Everybody after politics, everybody after economic gains and money, kind of a source and all that. They after it. They pursue towards this kind of the mundane pursuits. So he says that one should be free from all this political and economic freedom, and he has to embrace the political freedom, that means spiritual freedom, and then freedom of fear and narrow-mindedness and evil desires. And one should be liberated himself. One should be liberated from what? Liberate from kind of a fear, liberate from narrow-mindedness, and liberate from evil desires. And dear learners, and this is the poem is, like, where the mind is without fear and the head is held high, where the knowledge is free, where the world has not been broken up into the fragments of narrow domestic walls, and the world is completely differentiated with the narrow domestic walls. That shouldn't be there. Shouldn't be no narrow. Should be free from the narrow-mindedness. And where words come out from the depth of truth, one should be truthful. And where the tireless striving stretches its arm toward the perfection, one has to go toward the perfection. And then where the clear stream of reason, one should be rational. There should be a stream of reason in his thinking, reason in his ability. And where the mind is led forward by thee into ever-widening thought and action, into the heaven of freedom, my father, let my country awake. So here, the term my father is referring to the God. So he let my country awake. So everybody should be awake, because we are all God-fearing children. We have to worry for the God, and otherwise, we do all sorts of things. So this is an excellent poem for a religious tone. And then we have another poem. So as I told you, I'll take 4 important poems, very short poems, and then they are almost like they're the songs. They're written in almost 8 to 9, 10 lines. So they're very simpler poem. I explain the remaining 3 poems, and I just get into other texts. So this is the poem. The next is, this is my prayer to thee. Again, the entire, as I told you, entire the Gitanjali, it's a songs of the divinity. It reverberates the essence of God in his poetry. So this is my prayer to thee. What does he say here? The poet prays to God, his maker, to remove his spiritual poverty. Because there is lots of poverty in terms of spirituality. People completely, because there is interlink between one poem to another. There is a lot of interconnections. There is a spiritual poverty. He prays to him to make us strong enough to bear easily the joys and sorrows of life, and also to serve others with love and sympathy. One has to be, benevolent or kind of a generous. A generosity ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಮಾತಾಡುವಂತ ಒಂದು ಅಂಶ ಇದೆ. Because people cannot be self-centered. You need to imbibe the spirit of generosity. He says that he prays to make him so strong and to strong enough to bear easily the joys and sorrows. When you are so overjoyed, you should control yourself. When you are over sorrow, you should control yourself. You need to subdue your both the agony, happy, and sorrow. You cannot mix together, and you cannot glorify, and you can't indulge with all that. You need to pacify everything with your own rationality. This is what he says here. And he said that he prays to God and and sorrows and life, and also to serve others with the love and sympathy. He prays for the love and sympathy that people have to imbibe with. He prays to God to make him spiritually strong, so that he may never flatter the powerful. So one has to be spiritually very strong, so we'll never go to flatter, and you'll understand the powerful, insolent, and proud. These are the things which keeps a man always head high, and he looks forward for the betterment of the country and himself. This is what he says in this poem. This is my prayer to thee. And gradually he says that and so that he may always befriend the poor and protect them from the oppressions of the mighty. So here we understand that kind of a the class classification. So the oppressor and the oppressed. The oppressor, the one who traumatized, or one who dehumanizes the oppressed. For example, those are the day when much before independence, like pre-independent time, 1947 before, and how oppressor, like the Britishers, they oppress the entire country, isn't it? Otherwise, that's one thing. And in other way, like how India is based on the certain class classification, and the rich and the poor, and the haves and the have-nots, and the rich and the poor, as you all know that how this society has been fragmented into different caste system, and here that shouldn't be there. Oppressor should not oppress, it should not traumatize anybody, and there should also be a kind of a protection. A poor should be always protected by the rich, that like stretching your hands to someone to for the betterment of some other individual. So this is what the Tagore's Gitanjali, it reverberates, it echoes in the poem. And protected from the oppress of the mighty, and should also uplift the ennoble in his mind to the he's not disturbed by the trifling joy and sorrow and success and failure of whole life. And above all, God should give him strength enough to surrender himself and gladly and willing to his will and service. So God has to give us such a power to our humanity that every point of time, and we are there in front of you full to serve the God. Because when the God prevails in the country, and everything goes well. Because today, for everything that we do, our conscience pricks us, and we worry for the God, and we follow certain norms of the country, because we know that the God dwells everywhere, and we don't do any kind of immoral things. So this is one thing. Are you able to follow me? Are you getting the points? Okay, somebody can just drop that yes, you're getting and you're listening. Okay, this is a completely a religious poem, and how the poet has put forth his views to the God. It's a prayer, as I told you, it's a prayer. I just observe it carefully. And so far I just explained these two poems, where the mind is without fear and the head is held high, and then this is my prayer to thee. And the next poem is also very important, a very interesting poem. That is, I thought that my voyage had come to its end. So he says that I thought that my voyage had come to its end. This is the third poem. As I told you, I'll take up some 4 poems. This is the third one, and I'll just get into further debates. And then, so here, the poet feels that he has exhausted himself and that the path before he is closed. So he thinks that he is completely exhausted, and the paths are not clear. So he is not able to go further. Somebody has to show him the way to go, like a lead kindly light. You might have heard. Somebody has to show the way to go further. So this is again a songs which on the God, the presence of God, and new melodies break from forth from this heart, and a new country reveals itself to his view by the grace of God. So the God has his own vividness. For example, when you read a poem like The Pied Beauty by J.M. Hopkins, you'll understand, the God, he appears in every forms of creations. So here, the God grace is always there in every form in the country. And assuming that one has to understand that there is a God to lead us to the clear path. Here the poet is comparing himself to a traveler. So the poet is a traveler here. So what kind of a traveler? The other ways are clear, it's completely dark. How is it? The traveler has traveled over a vast distance and he's tired. Probably he hasn't reached the supremacy of spirituality so far in the country, though he was craving for. ನಾನು ಎಷ್ಟೋ ವರ್ಷಗಳ ಕಳೆದಿದ್ದೀನಿ, ಆದ್ರೆ ಈ ಒಂದು ಸ್ಪಿರಿಚುವಾಲಿಟಿ ಅನ್ನೋ ಒಂದು ಇದನ್ನ ನಾನು ಇನ್ನೂ ಅನುಭವಿಸಲಿಲ್ಲ ಅನ್ನೋಂಥ ಒಂದು ಬಯಕೆ ಇರ್ಬೋದು. He's craving for the spirituality, and he said that has traveled over the long vast distance, and he's tired now. The poet is very much tired. His physical endurance has reached its limit, and he's not so valor. He's not so steady now. He's not so physically strong. He has become weak, and he can't go furthermore. That means he's going to ripen age. Like he's getting older and older, and then. Further he says that he looks ahead and finds that the limit of his journey is reached, and there is no further way, and he thinks that his travel is completely stopped and he can't go even further, and the road before is closed, and his store of food and other necessities also all ended, and he thinks that now he will rest in peace in some time corner, and God wants otherwise, and the travel is compelled to move on, but he has lost everything. All the mundane necessities are also completely closed, and nothing is left. But he wants, the presence of God. Probably that itself gives him certain strength to, go further. Man is an instrument of God, and there is no limit to the service that can one render to the Maker. I think there is no limit. ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಇಷ್ಟೆಲ್ಲ ನನ್ನ ಪ್ರೇಯರ್ಗಳಿಗೂ, though I did a prayer a lot, my prayers are went in vain, they were not answered, but even then my prayers are not going to be endless. ಅದನ್ನ ನಾನು ಕಂಟಿನ್ಯೂ ಮಾಡ್ತೀನಿ. I keep pray for the God. Doesn't matter whether I'll be rewarded or not, whether I'll get the reward or not, doesn't matter, but I keep going to okay, fine, good. Okay, you're reading this poem. Yes, I thought my voyage has gone to, yeah, second point, but fine, that you have studied already in your school. Fine. So what he says, and the man is the instrument of God, and there is no limit to the service that he can render to his Maker. However, he put forth his, prayer, whatever. Though he doesn't get his answer for the prayers, but he doesn't stop continuing. He doesn't stop it. He keeps going on and it's everlasting. He keeps continuing to pray for the God. Like the tired traveler, when the poet feels that his songs has ended, he will sing no more. The God inspires him with the fresh melodies, and new songs break out of his lips. Even the songs are complete, he'll get another song. How? The God inspires him. God should give him the strength to go further. In this way, he continues to sing like a traveler who continues to travel as a fresh path and a new countries with a new wanderers upon his vision. So prayers closed, and even after that, you go on singing. And here also, though he's so tired, he'll get the strength from the God, and he never stops his prayer. And this is one thing. And then when he feels that he has reached the end of his journey, and God is the source of the poet's melodies, and God gives the strength. ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಒಂದೊಂದು ಸಾಂಗ್ಗಳು ಕೂಡ ಒಂದು ದೈವಿಕ ಶಕ್ತಿ ಇರುತ್ತೆ ಅನ್ನೋದನ್ನ ಹೇಳ್ತಿದ್ದಾರೆ. Every song, every prayer has lots of power of divinity. That's what he's saying, that the songs are because when you look at American literature, like we have one writer called Emerson, where he say that the prayer is the contemplation with oneself, with the soul anta ಹೇಳ್ತಾನೆ. He say that a prayer andre it's a contemplation anta ಹೇಳ್ತಾನೆ. Emerson ಹೇಳ್ತಾನೆ in his an essay. A prayer is a contemplation on self. So that means that the God is always dwells within us. So you need to do a prayer each and every time. So probably a fine day will certainly be rewarded, and you shouldn't be even unhappy with the reward, whether you not get the reward or whatever, and you should not stop doing it. This is ultimate message from the poet. And God is the source of the poet's melodies, and the poet continues to sing only because God continues to inspire him. So the God is always inspires you when you are right, when your paths are clear, when you are righteous, when you're prompt, when you're sincere, when you're good, your roads are always clear. You can go without any kind of other, the kind of hindrances. And it is all the will of God that he is but a servant to his will. So every one of us are the servant to the God, and the God, it is a will that God exists. So willpower, it is nothing but the God. So this is once again a poem which talks about the voyage. What is that? I thought that my voyage had come to its end. Look at the title. He says that I thought that my voyage had come to its end, but it doesn't end. It even stops. But there is no end for the voyage. There is no end for travel, and there is no end for prayer. So that's what the poet says. And the last poem, then I stop this. The last poem is this. What is that? The rain has held back for days and days. This is the title. The rain has held back for days and days. So how does he say here? The poet heart has grown spiritually dry. See, again, he talks about the spirituality. How does he say in a different way? He says that the poet's heart has grown spiritually dry. Spiritually, his heart, he is dry. And this spiritual deadness can be removed only if God showers upon him the rain of his love and mercy. So ಇವಾಗ ಬೇರೆ ತರನೇ ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಹೋಗ್ತಾರೆ. How does he say? The God has to give us showers. He has to bless upon him the rain of his love and mercy. A love and mercy in the ಆ ಒಂದು ಡ್ರೈ ಸ್ಪಿರಿಚುವಲ್ ಡ್ರೈ ಅಂತ ನೈಸ್ ಬರುತ್ತಲ್ಲ, ಆ ಸ್ಪಿರಿಚುವಲ್ ಡ್ರೈನೆಸ್ ನ ದ ಪಾಯಿಂಟ್ ಹ್ಯಾಸ್ ಟು rejuvenate it. So the rain, it is symbolically talking about the rain in terms of the mercy and in terms of love to a spiritual barrenness, spiritual thing. Okay, and then but God has for example, I think you might have read a poem called The Wasteland. You'll study that in your second year, and where even TSC also talks about the spiritual barrenness of modern civilization. He's an American poet. He talks about in Wasteland the spiritual barrenness. ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಈ ಒಂದು ಆಧುನಿಕ ಒಂದು ಪ್ರಪಂಚ ಒಂದು ಆಧ್ಯಾತ್ಮಿಕತೆಯ ಒಂದು ಬ್ಯಾರನೆಸ್ ಅಂತ ಕರಿತಾ ಹೋಗ್ತಾರೆ. There is no adhyatma, there is no spirituality, and it's completely barren. ಒಂದು ಬಂಜರು ಅಂತ ಪದ ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾನೆ. ಸೊ ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಆ ಒಂದು ಪೊಯಮ್ ಹೇಗೆ ಹೆಂಡ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ ಇಂಡಿಯನ್ ಫಿಲಾಸಫಿನ ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾನೆ. ಯಾರು TSC ಹೇಗೆ ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾನೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಆ ಒಂದು ಒಂದು ಬರುತ್ತಲ್ಲ ಇಂಡಿಯನ್ ಫಿಲಾಸಫಿ, there is like I've forgotten, but in the fragment of his the poem, The Wasteland, he uses Indian philosophy to say that yes, the one has to be so spiritually strong to to eradicate this kind of a spiritual barrenness. Okay, and then coming back to this poem, so spiritual dryness, and it can be removed only through the love and mercy. But the God has withheld this blessing from him for a long time. But he accuses God now because he controls so much. Then why God has withheld this mercy and the love? Why he has not given us? Why we are not so bestowed so far? And the poet, he put his kind of agony and sorrow in front of to the God. And this is symbolized by the fact that the sky is entirely clear, with not even a trace of cloud, and there is not even a hint of shower of fertilizing cool rain. There is no hint which can make it cool, which will make it the fertilizing. Why God has denied for a longer time? What is the reason? Why is God is denying by giving all that? So it seems that the God is indifferent to his true devotee. Sometimes God is also becoming indifference toward the devotee, because all our prayers are not answered in the moment, isn't it? Early. So our answers will not be answered so early. Probably, the true, the prayer, the true devotion will be answered in the moment. could not connect. Couldn't connect because of the network issues. And I was talking about these issues. What is that? So here, the poet is saying that the God is neglecting him, and he's neglecting with the indifference. So the punishment of God is welcome to the poet. So the God has the ability, the right to punish everyone at any point of time. So if like a father, he punishes him with his terrible anger, then the poet is sure he will be bent upon him with his love and mercy afterwards. So the poet is saying that if a God wants to punish, let us punish. But after all, the physical, the barrenness has to be redeemed. The spiritual barrenness has to be redeemed, and he has to one with the God. Like a mother bending her tearful face over, over her child after he has been punished by the father. So he's also, the poet is also in the same way. So I will never mind, the God has a right to punish his order. So here, God has two aspects. He's angry like a father and loving like a mother. So that's what the poet uses these two terms in a different way. In the first time, God has two aspects. He's angry like a father and loving like a mother. And both these aspects blend in total conception of God. God is both the love and justice. The God is both the love and justice. And this is what happens in Tagore's Gitanjali. This all the poems are evokes the kind of the God and soul and the poet and all that. So this is what Gitanjali. And now I would like to talk about sometimes how about Nehru's autobiography. We know that it's an autobiography, it's a documentation. And see, there is one statement that we ought to remember what Mulk Raj Anand says, the Indian writer, about this novel. Let me see, as much as possible, I just share my views within given time. And Mulk Raj Anand points out, Nehru seems to have adopted his own life as an experiment in history making and written this famous book. So this poem, autobiography, it is infused with, the entire, the personal history and as well as national identity and national history. So the Nehru's autobiography, it has infused with, it is contained, it's documented with the personal history as well as the national history and the national identity. Let us see how he documents his personal life and as well as the national history here. And we know that the most of the experience and episodes, they are covered the pre-independence episodes. And so here the autobiography, it's divided into different episodes. The one is the important episodes in his autobiography, that how he documents his childhood memories. The point number one, make it like a different divisions. The part one, we come across the extreme, the inquisitive or the kind of complete documentations about Nehru's childhood memories. And the point number two, and we also come across Nehru's youth and education. Yes, youthhood and his education in both in India and abroad. So these are the two parts. And the third one, and how is political intervention and how is political upliftment, his political intervention, and how he led the entire political system in one point of time. And after that, his freedom struggle. The part four is a freedom struggle, and the part five is like his affinity with Gandhi. And these are the five important components that you should remember when it is Nehru's autobiography. The point number one is the kind of, because he's basically from a very well-to-do family, an aristocracy family. And we all know that his father was a lawyer. And the entire text, it captures Nehru's childhood memories and his youthhood and his education in abroad and his political interventions and his political movements and his freedom struggles and as well as his affinity with the Gandhi. These are the five important things that we come across in this book, that is Nehru's autobiography. So what is that? See, Gandhi's autobiography was already being claimed as a world classic. When we talk about Indian classics in terms of autobiography, Gandhi's My Experiment with the Truth. This was considered as a classic text because of the day. Even now, it is a classic of Indian literature. And after that, this happens to be the most well-read and classic book of Indian literature in terms of autobiography. So Nehru's autobiography is entirely different in terms of his unique experiences, how he involved himself with both his personal life as well as his independence life of India. And then the point number one, I must tell you that I concentrate. I tell you a one episode. I mean, in one after every episodes in a hardly of 1 or 2 minutes, so that I try to give you justice in terms of given time. So what happened? Nehru was born, with a proper proverbial silver spoon, because we know that he was born with a silver spoon. He was born with all kind of support in terms of finance, in terms of all stability to get the expense, or in terms of best education and the best life. And this is the one thing. And he had all sheltered in his childhood. He was well-to-do. He belongs to a well-to-do family. And he listened stories from Indian epics. In the early of his days, he listened a lot of stories from the Indian epics and participated in many of the religious festivals, and celebrated and with his birthday celebrations and other that. He always wanted to be a central figure. So these are the certain things we understand in the first childhood experiences, and gradually. And Nehru, he recollects the towering personality of his father. He talks about his father and how his father was a role model to Nehru. How does he say? Motilal Nehru, who was the very embodiment of courage and wisdom. He says that his father was a man of epitome of courage and embodiment of wisdom. So he's a true inspirer to Nehru. And though Jawaharlal loved and admired his father, and he also feared him. So the father was a very stern and strict, and Nehru is also an inspired from his father, and he's also worried so much about him, because the father is a very, very stern teacher and a very stern mentor to him. So here, the author cites the incident of his stealing pen. He documents one incident during his childhood. What happens? He stole a pen from his pocket, father's pocket, and he was, was punished for that. So the author cites the incident of his stealing a pen from his father's writing table and being severely punished by it, and he documents it. So once he was bitterly, it's a bitter experience to him, because he stole a pen from his father's pocket and he was punished by it. And then, in fact, most of his tutors are the governors were Englishmen. He had such an advantage. He had a tutors from Western, the Britishers. Look at that, who are all there? See, in fact, most of his tutors, they would come and give him lessons at home itself. All are his British tutors, and for English, it was F.T. Brooks, an Irishman. He's a teacher to Pandit Nehru. An Irishman, F.T. Brooks, and who instilled into him the loves of book, because the developing an habit, instilled an habit of reading the books is quite common, isn't it? So here, F.T. Brooks, he instilled in Nehru the love of books and initiated him into the mysteries of the sciences. And he also instilled the mysteries of the sciences too. And here, and after that, Nehru's aristocracy birth coupled with his English upbringing at Harrow and Cambridge. And we all know that he had been to Harrow, had been to Cambridge for his, better education, and both were both guarantee of his impeccable properties in speech and gesture. And we know that impeccable language, spashtabadanta bhasha, without faultless language. So could possible because of his Cambridge and Harrow education. So he was sent to both the Cambridge and the Harrow Harrow universities in terms of his wonderful educations, and he was good at his speech as well as in gesture too. And here, from Brooks' talks on theosophy, Nehru came to realize the value of Hindu religion. Through F.T. Brooks, his mentor, his teacher, Nehru understood that the Hindu religion. At the age of 13, he became a member of the Theosophical Society. That is very, very important. He has become a member of a Theosophical Society. And Nehru's had a fascination for, even at the Cambridge while studying, he developed a habit of reading the children's literature. He used to read a lot of children's literature, and he enjoyed them, even being at Cambridge and all that. So what happened? And here, once Nehru's visit to an Irish Ireland in 1910 and brought him under the spell of the Irish patriotic movement. So he understood about the Irish patriotic movement, and somehow that inspired him in Indian freedom struggle movement also, and the movement of Satyagraha and all that. So he was inspired from the Irish national movement, and that's one thing. And after that, here, when he returned to India, he joined the Allahabad High Court as a lawyer. after his education in the foreign, Cambridge and other places, Harrow, he joined India in Allahabad as a high court as a lawyer, and he had this a gut feeling that his place was more appropriate amongst the Indian masses and in the thick of political movement. He's such a man of gut, an individual, because of his upbringing, as well as his a very good education in foreign, and he was basically he's a lawyer too. And it was advent of Mahatma Gandhi on the national scene that convinced Nehru to join the political mainstream. It is Gandhi who inspired Nehru to get into political movement. So Nehru saw Gandhi for the first time at the Indian National Conference at Lucknow. So the first, where did he confront Gandhi in a national conference, Indian National Conference at Lucknow in 1916. So these are all certain personal documents, as I described. And I gave you different parts, like his childhood and his youth experience and his political interventions and his freedom struggle movement and his affinity with the Gandhi. These are the 4 important chapters. And he talks about his personal family life and all that. And please, you get into the text and you certainly easily can understand, because it's written in a form and a simple language where everybody can understand. We can also perceive certain important significance in autobiography. And then after that, this is what happened. And that once the Kamala Nehru fell sick, and despite of that, he hardly met her confronted during when she was sick. And most of the time when she was sick, and he spent his time only in a jail. That he documents here. So he says that it is not often that Nehru refers to his family, to his friends, sister, wife, and daughter. He recollects with a tinge of nostalgia the 18 years of his married life at the time when Kamala Nehru was critically ill with a little hope of recovery. And most of the time, during that time also, he spent his time in the jail. Once when his wife was seriously ill, he was in jail. At that time, he documents as a very important episode, saying that the British government suggested that if he gave an assurance to keep away from the political activities. ನೀವು ಈ political activities ನ ಬಿಟ್ಟು, in case if you give up all these political activities and if you surrender yourself, so that we can allow you to see your wife ಅನ್ನೋದು ಒಂದು ಕಂಡೀಷನ್ ಕೂಡ ಅವರು ಹಾಕ್ತಾರೆ. How do they say that? The British government suggested that if he gave an assurance to keep away from the political activities and till the rest of your jail terms, he would be set free and attended on his wife, Kamala Nehru. So whereas even in that condition, he did not pay the heed, and he led his life in there, and that shows that his commitment for the nations as a true patriotic who against this British regime. And this is one thing. And another important thing is that Nehru's jail experiences. And he also documents his jail experiences and give a title called Animals in Prison. He talks about the bats and hornets and the wasps and quirrels and all that, and he says that most of the time he spends in jail, and where he also documents the author kept himself occupied in reading and writing. Both reading and writing, he developed these 2 habits more even in the jail also. He always he also made use of the time even while he was in a jail, and reads a lot and reading a lot and writes a lot too. So it is also a very important experience in the jail too. And Nehru, he reflects on different countries have adopted a different animals as the symbols of their ambitions. So here he talks about how the animals of the different countries. For example, the eagle for United States, and then eagles. Yeah, eagle of the United States, of America, and of Germany, the lion and the bull. For America, it is a lion. The Germany, it is a bull, and the dog for England, and the fighting cock for the France, and the bear for the old Russia. And he talks about the symbolic significance of these animals who represent each and every country symbols. He also documents that. And further, Nehru talks about Satyagraha movement, and where he talks about Satyagraha was a definite, though non-violent. It's a non-violent movement. You all know that. It made us shed the fear that crushed us, and we began to look people in the face as we had never done before, and to speak out our minds fully and frankly. So people have come up with their own ideas. The Satyagraha movement led people to celebrate their individuality, come up with their own true ideas, and against this regime of British. And then finally, the method of peace prevented to a large extent the growth of those terribly bitter racial and national hatred which had accompanied and such a struggle, and thus made the unlimited settlement easier. With a lots of incessant struggle against this British regime, ultimately they made it so through a satyagraha. And he also talks about his certain chapters on Lathi charges in 1927 and many other important concepts. So here in the epilogue, in the fag end of this text, in the epilogue, what does he say? Much before him, Rabindranath Tagore put a words. Rabindranath Tagore was intensely impressed by this great book, which he said runs a deep current of humanity. This you need to document in your exam point of view. The opinion about Rabindranath Tagore about this book is, what is that? What does he say? Intensely impressed by this great book, and he said that this book, it runs a deep current of humanity. This is the statement given by Tagore about this book. And in the epilogue, Nehru himself, he writes that. How does he say that? In the epilogue, we have what the author writes is this: I have reached the end of the story. This egotistical narrative, the self-centered narrative of my adventure through life, such as they are, has been brought up to today, February 14, 1935, thus ends a great classics. Then he ends the book in that time. So here, as I told you, the whole autobiography of Nehru, it documents the entire Indian national freedom struggle movement, about his upbringing and his education in foreign and his experiences in jail. And he talks about how different countries have different symbols which represent the countries and all that. And dear learners, and somehow I just threw a light on Nehru's autobiography. What does it document and what does it talk about in this essay, in this autobiography? And also this spoke about Tagore's Gitanjali. And certainly you benefited by this brief talk about these two texts. And overall, in these 5 days, in the first day, I dealt with Bacon's essays, and after that, Keats' poetry and the Dunn's poetry, and gradually the Dr. Faster's and the Rape of the Lock and the Canterbury Tales, and then further our important text, that's Wuthering Heights and Gitanjali and the autobiography and preface to Shakespeare. Within the given time, within these 5 days, somehow I try to give a justice to the texts which are introduced. And don't feel bad. You can just talk to us. You can just meet us in the department, and you come in person. Otherwise, you can talk to us between the official time between 10:30 to 5:30. And I wish you good luck. I wish you all the best for your educations and wish your studies, and wish you good luck to people. So we are here. You are always welcome to come and see us, we faculties, and the department always wholeheartedly there to support you. So I wish you good luck once again. Thank you all. Good luck to your exams. Hope you're listening. Okay. Okay. Thank you, Arish, and thank you, Bhagya, and many of you so actively participating. Okay, very good. Thank you very much. I'm going to close the session. I'm going to leave the studio, and you have my number, Dr. Natraj. My number is, as you all know, that 9741219820. It's there in the website. You can take my number. You can talk to me. Of course, most of you have my number. You can talk to me during the official time. Okay. Good luck to you, people. Okay. Yes, I'm going to leave the studio. You can talk to us. Some said that meeting may not be possible for people from other districts. Good. You try to talk to us over phone also. Okay. Yes. Yes, I see you. You can call always. Talk to me during the official times between 10:30 to 5:30. Okay. Okay. Yes. Good luck to you people. Bye bye. All the best. Thank you, Samira Sohani. And your comments it's a huge compliment. I relish them. I appreciate. It's a huge compliment that you people are giving. So I have no words about it, and we are so grateful to such a wonderful platform. Yes, thanks to our heads of our universities, the vice chancellors and the registrar, who had initiated through this platform, and we could accomplish our classes too well. So we are grateful to them. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, people.